Zach,
Hello, can you hear me?
hey man, am I detecting a slight hinge of gray in that beard of yours? It's been what, 7, 8 years?
Time's going by, man. Getting old over here.
How old are you now?
40.
Oh, are you? I saw my first gray in my upper 30s, I think.
You did better than me. I saw it when I was 35.
Wow. So how you been, man? I think it's literally, well, I guess we were adjacent when you were pulling in the crowds on TFR, but before, I think it's been 6, 7 years anyhow.
Yeah, I'd say probably early 2017. Probably about then.
You can kill your camera. We're just going to grab the audio.
Let me see. I'm not real good on Zoom.
Save us a little bandwidth.
There we go.
There you go. So Rose tells me you want to shred some politics as one of the things we cover.
Yeah, some things have happened in the world since I talked to her. I wrote down just a quick little list of things to get people to understand my work and where it is these days. And I was thinking just real quick, hit why we gave 95 billion on the day we did. The little stunt they just pulled in Baltimore on Nancy Pelosi's birthday, and then locking down the Golden Gate on Paul Pelosi's birthday, and then talk about the upcoming election.
Okay. Sounds good to me. We rip politics apart all the time, but we don't do it by the numbers.
Sure.
And Zach, maybe you want to start off in case anybody's not familiar with your work, just to make sure they know.
Of course.
The big boys in this world, they do things for a reason, and this is what you are so freaking amazing at, pointing out why they do what they do when they do it.
Yeah, I'll intro us all in, and then right out of the gate, Zach, I'll have you run down where people can find your work and anything you want to add in before we jump.
Okie dokie.
All right.
By the way, I don't think I've ever talked to you before.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think you were co-hosting back then. Nice to meet you. I'm Zach.
I'm Jason. Yeah, I jumped in, I don't remember, a couple episodes in. But anyway, I'm ready when you guys are.
All right, cue it up. We're calling this 578.
Recording in progress.
All right, here we go, guys. I'll bring in Jason, then I'll bring in Zach. All right, man. Welcome to Crrow777 Radio. This is episode 578. Jason Lindgren is with me, and Mr. Zach Hubbard joins me. He was been on the show before, but it's been years and years. We were adjacent. He was pulling in quite a gang of people over on TFR when Jason and I were there for a short while. But welcome, Jason.
And a beautiful good afternoon.
All right. Welcome, Zach. Why don't you tell folks where they can find your work and throw in anything you want to get in?
Yes, you can find me on YouTube if you search GematriaEffectNews or GematriaEffectNews. I like to pronounce it both ways, but technically it is Gematria, and that is Gematria. I also have a website by the same name. It's just GematriaEffect.news. No .com or .org after that, just GematriaEffect.news. And if you like to read, I do have some books out there. You can search for my name on, that big website that's taken over the world, but it's on other places too. If you search my name, Zachary K. Hubbard, you should find at least my book, Number Games. And those are mostly the places to find me these days.
Excuse me, I'm coughing.
That's okay.
Sorry about that, guys. You're going to have to cut that, Jason. Sorry. All right. Well, of all the people that I know, I don't know anyone who pulls the numbers down like Zach does. And he does it in his head. But what's more, he draws the lines out to current events, to past events. I think we're planning on taking politics apart a little bit, but I will remind everybody who cares to listen. Politics is nonsense. Politics is a mind virus. Politics was created to control your mind. We demonstrate it in a different way than Zach is about to demonstrate it. The way Zach is about to demonstrate it shows the power of now, what's going on right now. The last time Jason and I demonstrated it, we took a speech apart from the central bankers from 1924, where they admitted that they put together the left and the right wing in this country so that they can make people argue about things that don't matter while they take over the world. Look where we are now. But Zach, where would you like to jump in?
Yeah, right here is great. So I do want to get to the upcoming 2024 election that so many people are so emotionally invested in when they should not be, because just as you said, it's a great deception. There's so much that can be said about, but I do want to get to the symbolism in this year's election and how many things are very interesting, and what's been going on with the campus protests and the recent raid at Hamilton Hall, 56 years to the day of the raid that was there in the time of Vietnam. And then that, of course, allowed the news media to bring up the political assassinations of 56 years ago, which was MLK and RFK. And what I want to do before we get into that is just go back in history to the 16th century. And then I want to quickly bring us back up through history, including the assassination of Martin Luther King, and then start talking about some things that are taking place right now. Again, I like to show people why they etch on the Masonic temple in DC all is number, and help people understand why the fourth book of the Bible is called Numbers, and how our calendar system, which we are on, came from the Catholic Church. In this calendar, the Gregorian calendar that says we're doing this interview on May 3rd, 2024, this calendar is credited to a Jesuit priest, Christopher Clavius. And if you look into when the calendar we're on was implemented in the world, it's at the end of the 16th century, the same time English was standardized with the 26-letter alphabet. And that was at the end of the century where the Jesuits came into existence. The Jesuits, who their original mission was to stop Martin Luther and the 95 Theses. Just last week, Joe Biden put his signature on $95 billion for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And he did that on the 201st day of the war in Israel with Gaza. And these two numbers, 95 and 201, are very important. And the last time we talked, I might have had some notes here and there about these numbers. But since the last time we spoke, my focus has really zeroed in on these very numbers, 95 and 201. And if you go from the pinning of the 95 Theses by Martin Luther, for people who do not know about this part of history, this is the leader of the Protestant Reformation, who led an uprising against the Catholic Church, or at least that's how it goes down in the history book. But from the pinning of the 95 Theses, which is on the day we now call Halloween, October 31st, 1517, to the establishment of the Jesuit order in Paris, France, August 15th, 1534, again, from the pinning of the 95 Theses to the establishment of the Jesuits, was 201 months and just days later. The 201 and the 95 are numbers that come together a lot in history. And just to give you some really clear examples, Martin Luther King Jr., who was not born with that name, he assumed the name Martin Luther after the Protestant Reformation leader. He was assassinated on the 95th day of the year in 1968. And exactly 201 days later was the nation's first major gun control legislation in U.S. history. And that's when serial numbers started going on guns. There was going to be a lot more tracking by Big Brother of who has firearms. More recently, you had the Event 201 pandemic simulation, October 18th, 2019. And that was the exact same day that the military World Games began in Wuhan, China. And of course, a month later, you'd have the outbreak, the pandemic, the early days of it in Wuhan, China. But if you look into those military World Games, they began in the year 95, and they began in Italy. And guess who was there? Of course, the Catholic Church and the Jesuits. The 95 World Trades, excuse me, yeah, you can merge them into one event, but the 95 Oklahoma City bombing, of course, blamed on Timothy McVeigh, was put to death right before the World Trade Centers, but that bombing in 95 was on a very special day to the Jesuit order. That was Ignatius of Loyola Day, as I like to call it. That's the day in history became recognized as the first superior general. again, there's a long history of 95 and 201, and the latest thing we've seen in history is the 95 billion, again, signed off on the 201st day of the year. And these numbers are important to the Jesuit history because, again, their original mission was to stop Martin Luther and the 95 Theses, which is why they were eventually recognized by the Roman Catholic Church on September 27th in the year 1540, the day leaving 95 days left in the year. And if you look into the Jesuits and their history, they were saved by Catherine the Great, who preserved the Jesuit order with 201 Jesuit priests, which was in the time of their suppression, which is the time the United States of America was being formed. And, oh, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, just the 201 with the Jesuit history. Pope Francis, the first officially publicly Jesuit pope. Pope Francis, for his historical perspective, the Jesuits were created in Paris, France, and the last French pope in the history of the church was the 201st. But Pope Francis is the first to live in Suite 201 at the Vatican. And you start to look at this nation's history, you start to realize what's interesting about certain founders who might have died on the exact same day in 1826 on July 4th, who were very outspoken about what might happen if the Jesuits came out of suppression. Anyhow, you start to notice that from the beginning of when this nation was first formed to what's going on in history, you start to see that there's some hallmarks of who's really running the nation. Again, when the Jesuits first came to America, they set up camp in Washington, D.C., and that's why they eventually launched their first Jesuit university, Georgetown, there. And again, the first recognized president in U.S. history is George Washington, which is his term began in 1789, the same year Georgetown was officially established. But then you notice how they moved Inauguration Day from what it used to be March 4th to January 20th, which is the 201st day of the nation's age. And it's also a date that a lot of the world writes 20/1 for the 20th day of the first month, which looks a bit like 201. But the point is, you start to realize these patterns, then the next question becomes, well, why would they do this? What does that number mean, 201? What is the significance of it? And that's where this Kabbalistic practice of encoding numbers with words known as Gematria or Gematria comes in. First of all, in the Hebrew study, the word pertaining to enlightenment has a numerical value of 201. So that this number is connected to knowledge, light. Now, in English, if you guys are new to my work, I began with two ciphers, the alphabetic order and the alphabetic order with numerology. And in the end of 2016 is when I realized that the other half of the code was running the alphabetic order in reverse and the alphabetic order in reverse with numerology. So we'll introduce these four ciphers, but just with the most simple cipher, the alphabetic order. The founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius of Loyola, his name equates to 201. The first Jesuit pope, Pope Francis, his birth name is Jorge Mario Bergoglio. With the same cipher, his name equates to 201. His apartment that is Suite 201 has a name. It's called the Domus Sanctae Martae. And with the same cipher, it adds up to 201. With regards to the current president right now, Joe Biden, he lost his wife and daughter when he became senator-elect on Limestone Road. Limestone Road equates to 201 when you run the alphabetic order in reverse. Just making Z1 back to A is 26. But more recently, when he was 72 years old, he lost his son, Beau Biden, 201 days from the Pope's birthday. And the funny thing about that is Beau Biden died at age 46, and Joe Biden was elected number 46, exactly 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday, when there's 46 books in the Catholic Old Testament, and the only Catholic president before Biden was JFK, who was assassinated at age 46. But Beau Biden, he dies 201 days from the Pope's birthday, and the former head of Georgetown, who's a Jesuit priest, Leo Jeremiah O'Donovan, he does the funeral for Beau Biden and the inauguration for Joe Biden. The funeral at age 46, the inauguration as number 46, and that same most simple cipher, Leo Jeremiah O'Donovan, equates to 201. And again, this number is massive. This number goes back to, there's only one out of all the presidents we've had today, in terms of the names that we know him as, only one president's name equates to 201, and it's James Madison. And he's who was president when the Jesuits came out of suppression. You go back to the first Supreme Court Chief Justice John Jay, 201. Keep in mind, James Madison's the father of the Constitution, but this 201 number, it really is omnipresent with the Jesuit history. And I could sit here and go on for hours and hours about all the high Jesuit ritual. But the point is, this number has a meaning. And when you consider that in history, the Illuminati was founded by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt. From the day that he founded the Illuminati, May 1st, that anniversary date, May 1st, from that day to the day he died in history, November 18th, 1830, he died 201 days after the anniversary of the Illuminati's establishment, and he renamed the Illuminati. First, he called it Bavarian Illuminati, but then he renamed it Order of Illuminati, which equals 201. Ends up dying in history 201 days from the anniversary of its establishment. He was Jesuit, but he was also someone who was Jewish. He was a young Jewish person when his parents died, and he was raised by a Jesuit priest. Again, you look into Bavaria and the founding of the Illuminati, it's all very Jesuit. And of course, Illuminati's an Italian word, and the Jesuits served the Pope in Rome. But yeah, the Illuminati has this 201 connection, which connects with the Jesuits. And then Israel. You know, a lot of people think, for all the people who think Jews run the world, again, we're on the Jesuit calendar, and it's very obvious who runs the world when you really have the facts. Again, you can look at why Israel was established, when it was established, and who was behind its establishment. Its official name, State of Israel, equates to 201. And David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, he died 201 days after May 14th, the anniversary of Israel being established. It's why Netanyahu in recent years stepped down on June 13th, the day leaving 201 days left in the year, and then returned on 12/29, December 29th. 12/29 is the 201st prime. It's also Albert Pike's birthday, and some people say the letter about 3 world wars written by Albert Pike is fake. But I feel like that's more of a recent trend to dismiss that letter. If you look into the publication date for Albert Pike's letter about 3 world wars, it's August 15th, which is the Jesuit order's birthday. And there's a reason that the January 6th insurrection, the stage-managed propaganda for the ongoing narrative that they need in the ongoing divide of we the people. But there's a reason that January 6th came 201 days after Albert Pike's statue collapsed. The only Confederate statue when Lincoln blamed the Civil War on the Jesuits, and Confederate's one of those words that also has gematria of 201 when you just run the alphabetic order in reverse. But yeah, again, I wanted to start with this understanding of 201 and 95 and why they're important numbers to the Jesuits, their original mission to stop the 95 Theses, how they bring these numbers together again and again. And, you know, Martin Luther King Jr., I talked about, again, how he was assassinated on the 95th day of the year, and then 201 days later was the nation's first major gun control legislation. Keep in mind, if MLK were alive, he would have turned 95 years old this year. And 1 week after what would have been his 95th birthday, his son just dropped dead. And I want to take a pause here to see if you want to get any questions in, because I know I can be long-winded. But I next want to talk about Baltimore and what happened on Pelosi's birthday, because Baltimore is a predominantly black city with a gematria of 95. And I want to talk about Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream, and how the media paralleled the bridge collapse to Salvador Dali's The Broken Bridge in the Dream, and how these things are not an accident, but high symbolism being carried out by a Jesuit cabal, which runs this nation, Israel, and has been running a lot of places since before we even existed. But yeah, please, Crow. And Jason, go ahead.
Let's try to clarify a few things, but you brought up Pike, which I was going to bring up, because I also noticed that they're trying to defame the idea that Pike wrote about 3 world wars. And for anyone who's not familiar, the basic gist of it is he covers the first 2 from a we're taking over the world point of view, but the third one takes, let me see if I can get this right, gets the Zionists in a fight with, I guess, the Arabs or most of the world, but they do it in such a way that at the end of it, The Zionists are destroyed. The people they fought with are destroyed. And they've basically just leveled the playing field. And there's a bit more to it than that. But I heard you say what I've been thinking. It's very recent that they're trying to defame this work.
Yeah, the last decade, I've noticed a real push to undermine that Albert Pike ever wrote a letter about 3 world wars. And I could pull up my old notes on that. I've been working on my 3rd book forever, and I have so many different versions of it. But a few years back, I was really focused into Art of War, translated by the Jesuit priest Father Amiot. Again, I was just talking about the 201s in the Jesuits. Art of War and World War both equate to 102. It's a big number with Pearl Harbor. For people who don't know, 9/11 was simulated 102 days before it happened with Operation Amalgam Virgo by the federal government. Of course, September 11th is the time of Virgo. But yeah, not enough people talk about the Jesuits. Again, we're on their calendar. We're essentially speaking the English language, their version of it. It's their high ritual day after day, synced with the Pope. Go ahead.
Let me point something out. So just recently, they redid James Clavell's Shogun on television, but they rewrote it. And I haven't seen Dune, but people are telling me they're rewriting Dune. I mean, when you have a classic, what's the point? Why would you rewrite Lord of the Rings or Dune or Shogun or any of these books? But in Shogun, one of the big chapters is the pilot who's been stranded in Japan is talking to the Shogun or the future Shogun. And he says, there's this dude named the Pope that owns you. And there's a canonical bull, and he names it. And that bull is still in force. And so these important narratives and these classic works show the placement of the Jesuit order. When he gets there, stranded in Japan, way the hell back then, who's there? Well, the Jesuits are there. Everywhere you went back then, they were the first into so many places from the Western world. And I think people have lost track about how much power they established very early. I mean, before our country was even established, I think.
Absolutely. And with regards to Japan, Japan is the house of the rising sun. And again, the Jesuits serve the Catholic Church that has been worshiping the sun. Here's a good one. If you look up the Jesuit logo, for people not familiar with it, it's the sun with 32 sun rays around it. That's why the Dodgers ended their 32-year drought against the Rays the other year in scripted baseball, which the Jesuits clearly control, just like pretty much all the world of pro sports. Bread and circus, all roads lead to Rome. Military World Games, the day of their pandemic simulation, which was put on by Klaus Schwab, big Jesuit. But the Jesuit logo, inside of the sun, the letters IHS for Isus Hominum Salvator. That motto, when you run the alphabetic order forwards, Isus Hominum Salvator equates to 274. The Catholic Church has celebrated the sun in the sky's birthday since 274 AD. Isus Hominum Salvator 274. If you run it in reverse, Isus Hominum Salvator equates to 266. Pope Francis is the first Jesuit pope, the 266th in the history of the church. And again, when he spoke in D.C., for example, the Jesuit stronghold back in 2015, he did so on the 266th day of the year, not arbitrarily. Again, I said there's 4 base ciphers. Isus Hominum Salvator, the small way, equates to 85. Above the letters IHS in the logo is the Templar cross. The word Templar, the big way, is 85. 85 Templar, 85 Isus Hominum Salvator. We invaded Afghanistan, and Bush, who was the president at the time, member of Skull and Bones, who gets their symbolism from how the Templars buried their dead in an ossuary, he referred to it as a crusade. Again, we invaded Afghanistan October 7th. That's the day leaving 85 days left in the year. Templar 85, Isus Hominum Salvator 85. You start to realize that these things weren't an accident. It wasn't an accident that Bush, this member of Skull and Bones, referred to as a crusade. You see, it's a sick joke. And now here we are, all these years later, and what happens? We have what they call Israel's 9/11 on the same day, October 7th, the day leaving 85 days left in the year. The United Nations, which is completely Jesuit-controlled, Antonio Gutierrez, their leader right now, is 201. There's 201s all over the place. The head of the European Union, you start to realize this 201 number, you start to see what this Illuminati Jesuit network really is and where they are. For example, it's not an accident that Donald Trump just buried his ex-wife on the 201st day of the year after she fell down the stairs exactly 60 weeks into the first ever Jesuit Ignatian year when it's the upcoming 60th election. I don't want to spiral off into that tangent, but
So let me pull us back around. Let's talk about the numbers for a minute. You've mentioned 95, you mentioned 201, and you've started to reciprocate on 85. In your view, Zach, with all the experience you have tracking this through history, through current events, what is it with the numbers? Now we look at the number 201. Everyone who listens to me immediately recognizes it reduces to 3. They probably don't recognize a lot more than that listening to me. Is it a cipher to a calendar? Is there power?
Yes.
Is there black magic?
Yes.
Is it encoded to the sky clock? Is it all of the above?
Yes.
What is
yes?
your view?
Yes.
Okay.
So here, let's get the big picture view. Yeah. Thank you for. Okay. So in the end of the 16th century, again, the 16th century, the Jesuits come at the beginning. By the end, you have this new calendar. You have English standardized as the 26-letter alphabet. Just recently, before that in history, you had English Bibles that are numbered. All of these systems have been intertwined. At the end of the 16th century, you also got the heliocentric model. Heliocentrism equates to 201. If you run it the other way, heliocentrism equates to 150. So you have 150 and 201, forwards and backwards. It's interesting, the 150, because they say the sun is 150 million kilometers away on average. Heliocentrism, 150, 201. The Catholic Church that worships the sun at the end of the 16th century, this spiritual and scientific agreement that still coincides ultimately with the Catholic Church's belief system about it being all about the sun. And again, we said there's 4 base ciphers. They say the sun is 93 million miles away on average. We talked about how order of Illuminati with the alphabetic order is 201. If you apply numerology instead, order of Illuminati equates to 93. So I want to make a point with this 93, 150, and 201, which all fit in with the distance of the sun and heliocentrism. By the way, the word Illuminati alone equates to 150. Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin's how we're going to connect this. And look at how magnificent this is. Alec Baldwin smokes the Ukrainian woman on the set of Rust right before the Russia-Ukraine war, which began in the Donbass region, which equals 201. And of course, Biden and Putin met on Pearl Harbor Day right before it began, 201 days into the first ever Jesuit Ignatian year. And that goes with Hawaii, which was made a state exactly 201 months after Biden was born. But anyway, Baldwin's birthday is the 93rd day of the year. And when he was a younger man in 1993, Bruce Lee's son was buried on Alec Baldwin's birthday after being shot on the set of The Crow. And when Brandon Lee died, they compared it to Bruce Lee, who died while filming Game of Death. And Bruce Lee died on the 201st day of the year, July 20th, which of course is the anniversary of the moon landing, the illuminated object in the sky. Neil Alden Armstrong, most simple cipher, 201, moon landing, July 20th, 201st day of the year. And of course, the moon landing in 69, when the astrological symbol for Cancer is 69, and the moon's ruled by Cancer, and all that too. But, and by the way, Illuminati, the small way, is also 69. So you got this major Illuminati thing with the moon landing and this ongoing 201. But again, the point is, Bruce Lee's death has parallels to how his son dies on the set of The Crow. Then they compare what happens on the set of the set of Rust to the set of The Crow when Brandon Lee was buried again on Baldwin's birthday, the 93rd day of 93. And then they said Alec Baldwin shot the Ukrainian woman at 1:50 in the afternoon local time. Again, if you guys don't remember this, just go look it up. 1:50. Everyone published the same thing. She was shot at 1:50. And I'll give you one. So we hit the 93 and the 150. You want to guess how many days after Alec Baldwin's birthday it was that he shot the woman?
201.
It sure was. It sure was. And again, you follow this stuff, these kind of patterns come together quite a bit. It's just the Baldwin one is one that most people remember. So I'll choose that for the example. And a lot of people did overlook how he shot the Ukrainian woman on Rust in a church shootout scene, again, right before Russia-Ukraine.
So let's draw some parallels here. For those of you that remember the James Shelby Downard work, in my view, a man who showed us more truth about how this country was set up and who was pulling the threads, but more importantly, the kind of black magic-y methods that are used. And what Zach's pointing out, using Baldwin and connecting it back through, is a bit like James Shelby Downard's what's it called, Jason? The geomancy. So there's a place in the country where a whole bunch of people died, and then that place gets leveraged because that energy is in that place. In the same way, they're using this chain of events, one through the other. And as Zach pointed out in just the example he used, it has to do with supposedly people being accidentally killed with guns on movie sets, which actually tells you the truth because the whole thing is a movie set. But when we come to the numbers, Zach, delineate. So they have power, these numbers. They're black magic-y. They're syncing to a calendar. They're syncing to the sky clock cycles. They're connecting one event with another through time.
Absolutely.
How would you delineate beyond what I've said the importance of the actual numbers so people can begin to grasp why it matters?
Yeah, so to build on to what you're saying, I've always taken it back to this example since the earliest days of this research. When I was first looking into this, I was asking myself, okay, why are they doing this though? Where is the power in this? And you use the word energy. If you look at the most popular video on YouTube about Gematria in the Hebrew form by a rabbi, it begins with him explaining that this knowledge is energy. And with the most simple cipher, just for the record, English equals 74, like Gematria, like occult, like Masonic, like energy, like holiday, like killing. All of these things equal 74. Stabbing even equals 74. And the 74th day of the year is to remember the stabbing of Caesar. And then 3 of the first 5 U.S. presidents died on 7/4. And all 3 of them had a problem with the Jesuits and the Catholic Church. Again, Adams and Jefferson died July 4th, 1826. And then 1826 days later, Monroe died on July 4th. But again, energy. If you look into the ancient mystery religions, Kabbalah, where this thing comes from, Gematria is one of them. But another big one is Hermeticism. And Hermeticism explains that everything has a vibration, and that this pertains to the energy field. Everything has a vibration, every shape, every sound, every letter, every number, everything. And Hermeticism also communicates the idea that these vibrations have an influence on people. And Hermeticism also communicates the idea that you can be controlled by these things, or you can do the controlling by understanding them. What I'm always pointing out is the things that I'm talking about. I'm an outsider still looking in, trying to figure it out more and more each day. And I've made a lot of progress in the decade plus that I've been here now. But again, somewhere in this world, there are some master occultists. And where they got the knowledge from, if it's even from this world, there's people in the world who are masters of this. There's a reason they're doing this. And people need to understand this is being done every single day in high ritual. I'll prove that in spades as we talk about what they just did in Baltimore and San Francisco with Nancy and Paul Pelosi's 84th birthdays. But again, these people are manipulating our energy. And there's a reason that killing has the same value as Gematria. And there's a rock song out there by the band Slipknot, Gematria, the killing name. And Sting of the Police, they did a similar song, Murder by Numbers, where killing's as simple as ABC is 1, 2, 3, in light of the word murder equals 83, and that song came out in 83. But yeah, there is a real energy about this, and as silly as it might seem, you look at humanity and you see how they just march along to nonsense every day and continue to tune into the news that's been lying to them for all of their lives in the most obvious of fashion. But somehow it still maintains credibility with the sleeping masses. So I look at this as some kind of spell. Again, language, spells, magic, spelling, curses and cursive. Again, there is something literally being done to the sleeping masses, the people that all of us know about, who we've tried to reach out to and pull them out of their coma and their silly ways. And how can you still be putting a slave muzzle over your face? And are you serious? You're seriously thinking about getting a Pfizer jab for a 99.9% survivable illness when they're the most sued company in the history of the world for wrongful death and injury? Again, the sleeping masses are in a trance, and they have been for all of my life, which has only been so brief. Here we are 40, but I've noticed it since I was a young person. And again, I'm always long-winded in my answers, but yes, energy, spells, control, influence. This is what I think it all comes back to.
I'm with you. One of the things in one of the ancient art forms you mentioned, one of the key principles is that mind precedes everything, and your mind can be measured. When you think a thought, it's actually real. It can be measured. It is an energy. It is a vibration. Back in the day when I so many years ago said, have you noticed how many times you can find old movies with 9/11 encoded into it? It's on the clock on the wall in a 1950s movie or earlier. It's everywhere. It's on a sign. It's in they flash it at you in that Bruce Willis movie, The Fifth Element. They use the taxi logo in a mirror because IX is 9 and XI is 11. So they use the mirror in the cab to flash the 9/11 idea. Well, what are they doing? It's exactly what Zach said. They're syncing to a calendar. They're manipulating your mind and prepping you into a spell, basically. They're preparing your mind. In the case for all the times it happened before 9/11 had happened, they were preparing you for a thing that hadn't even occurred yet. All these events are being tied, but I don't think there's any way we can skirt around that. There seems to be a master cipher that keys this to calendars. And it almost feels to me, Zach, like the ridiculous calendar we use, the Gregorian, is just the idiot's calendar. And that there's actually a much better calendrical system in place somewhere in this world where, as you said, top occultists are priming all the gears to this massive machine.
They really are. And again, just to make something real simple, the word Pope, it's 4 letters. It's easy to add. P is the 16th letter of the alphabetic order. O is the 15th. P is the 16th. E is the 5th. You add it together. Pope is 52. We're on a 52-week calendar named after the Pope, where high ritual throughout the world is attached to the Pope day after day, as we often talk about. And you're just mentioning the key. I would like to just tell people about the collapse of the Key Bridge, and for people to understand the way our government plays games with us and how they are symbolically taking down infrastructure as a storyline for why they need more taxpayer money. And again, you pay attention to how often these types of things happen. You see the way we're getting nickel and dimed and how it's all unnecessary and how we really are ruled over by a form of tyranny. That it's just, some people don't think evil exists, but I mean, for all those people, I'd really like to think about what I'm about to say with what they just did with the Key Bridge. So here's the deal with the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Again, Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. So it's symbolic that this goes down the way it did. Now, Nancy Pelosi's from Baltimore, and she's been governing for a long, long time out in the Bay Area, where we think of the Golden Gate Bridge. And if you guys go back and watch my work from March 26th, I showed the direct connection and that something was coming to the Golden Gate Bridge in the coming days. And then sure enough, they had the pro-Palestinian lockdown of the Golden Gate Bridge on Paul Pelosi's birthday. And people didn't get the joke of that because there's a Golden Gate at Temple Mount, which has been closed to the Palestinians for years now. And this is another thing we've been talking about, but look at this. The Key Bridge came down on the 86th day of the leap year. And in the most simple cipher, Key Bridge adds up to 86. Key equates to 41, bridge equals 45. Put it together, 41 plus 45, 86. Now, if you rewind 86 weeks and 1 day earlier from the bridge coming down, from the day the bridge came down, exactly 86 weeks backwards in a day, Nancy Pelosi was in Singapore on Francis Scott Key's birthday, which is also her father's birthday. Her father, who was the 41st mayor of Baltimore, he has the same birthday as Francis Scott Key, August 1st. So it matters that she was with the leader of Singapore, shaking his hand in Singapore, because they said it was a Singaporean ship, the Dolly, that took down the bridge. So the bridge gets 86th on the 86th day of the year, 86 weeks later. Key Bridge in Gematria equates to 86. Now, they said the bridge came down at 1:28 in the morning. Bridge collapse in the most simple cipher is 128, and it came down 128 days before August 1st, which is Francis Scott Key's birthday. Francis Scott Key, for the record, died at age 63. Amy Klobuchar, who's the senator in Minnesota, she was all over the media that day because they had a bridge collapse on August 1st, Francis Scott Key's birthday. Funny enough, but she was all over the media that day talking about how fast with federal funds they got the bridge rebuilt and how we need to do it again, get a lot of federal money out there real quick and fix this bridge pronto like they did. Amazingly, it was the 307th day of Amy Klobuchar being 63 years old. 307 is the 63rd prime, and that number comes together a lot in high ritual. It's a lot to explain, but for example, Tom Brady's 307th career game was in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which equates to 307 in Gematria, and he became 6-3 in the Super Bowl, with Belichick winning his 6th at age 66, a year after Nick Saban won his 6th at age 66. Anyway, it's a whole other topic, but the point is these numbers come together a lot in high ritual, and what it shows is how the chessboard has been set and why certain people have been picked from the script, whether their scripted careers as a senator like Amy Klobuchar, or the greatest sports star in NFL history, playing for the New England Patriots right after 9/11 and the Patriot Act, when, of course, the Twin Towers crumbled into 0 towers before they became One World Trade Center, 201. And Tom Brady was born in 1977, 201 years after this nation and 201 years after the Illuminati. And he was married to Giselle, born on the 201st day of the year. And his last Super Bowl, where he went down to Tampa, and they all just went to pro sports championships, including him winning one. He had 201 passing yards in the scripted box score. But yeah, again, I'm getting tangential. So the Baltimore thing, coming back to the Baltimore Bridge, 86. We talked about 128 in bridge collapse. The bridge also came down on the 128th day of Joe Biden's age, 128th day of his age. A couple of years ago, if you go back to January 28th, 128, the Fern Hollow Bridge collapsed while Joe Biden was in Pittsburgh to talk infrastructure. Fern Hollow equates to 128 like bridge collapse, and that bridge was right next to the synagogue that had the mass shooting back in 2018. The Tree of Life Synagogue, where they had just had the active shooter drill not long before that. And again, that's a whole nother story, but the name of that synagogue is also 128, which of course numerology breaks down to 11, the master number. And the point I'm making is these people continue to execute master plans against us by a numerical code, essentially tricking us into the latest lie that's going to cost us even more money and likely rights and liberties. But it's also symbolic too, because like I mentioned, the media compared the bridge collapse to the Salvador Dali painting, The Broken Bridge in the Dream. The title of that, the title of that painting, The Broken Bridge in the Dream, equals 128. Again, Salvador Dali died at 84. This happens on Pelosi's 84th birthday. She lost her father, who used to be mayor in Baltimore, at age 84. Again, on her husband's 84th birthday, the Golden Gate Bridge gets shut down. For the record, Golden Gate Bridge in Gematria equals 135. The ritual in Baltimore happened 135 days after the Superior General's birthday, and Joe Biden that day referenced how they needed more money for his infrastructure plan, which in the name of that plan is 135 in Gematria. But again, you can just see how all of this stuff's so symbolic from coast to coast, and you have these old Catholic pillars in the political party. You got Joe Biden, who's on his deathbed. You got Nancy Pelosi, who's on her deathbed. They both had some embarrassing moments. They're old and near their end. The infrastructure's old and near their end. This country's looking old and near its end as we know it, especially in post-2020, when we essentially, gave up what it was to be America because Switzerland said lockdown for the 99.9% survivable after Event 201. But yeah, let me shut up and hand it back over to you guys.
So Jason, you want to get something in here?
There's something I've always wondered about this stuff, because I know this is what they do. I've always wondered, how do the orders come down from on high? And I don't know if you would know this or if you've just speculated on it, but how does it filter down to the lower aspects of the system to make sure things line up? Because clearly they are lining up.
I do not have the answer to that question. I could speculate, but again, I'm an outsider looking in. I just my thought process over the years has been, okay, who has the means to do this? Okay, we are on the Catholic Church's calendar. You look into the oldest script of English. From my research, it goes back to the monk Burford of Ramsey Abbey from the year 1011 AD. So started out Catholic. By the end of the 16th century, they got the language and the calendar synced up. You might recall the Georgia Guidestones, which came down by the numbers 201 days after the Pope's birthday, said, unite the world in a new living language, as well as depopulate the earth greatly. I've always thought that that was something written long ago, and I've always thought that this new living language to unite the earth in is this one. And yeah, but so again, I do not have the answer to the question, but I can tell you who gave us the calendar definitively, and how all this happened at the same time. And I can show you day after day how they're lining rituals up with the Pope and the Superior General. So one way or another, it's not about, I don't know how they're doing it, but I'm pretty damn sure I know who's doing it. And it goes back to the Jesuits, the same one many of founders warned about, and the same one that Abraham Lincoln blamed the American Civil War on. By the way, that new Civil War movie by Alex Garland, when that movie first, they put out the trailer for the first time 201 days after his birthday. And you might recall the actor who's been in several Civil War and slavery movies, Andre Braugher, he was dead at that time. And when the trailer debuted, it was 201 days from his birthday. He just died a couple days earlier. He's Jesuit educated himself, just like Denzel Washington, everybody's favorite actor. But yeah, I can't tell you how necessarily. I'm sure at this day and age they're using computers. You know, I remember from years ago talking to you, Crow. You talked about how you used to be in media, and the reason you got out is because they were essentially handing you a cookie cutter sheet of here's your news story, and you just need to fill in the blank spots and then put your name on it, so it's your article. And you didn't want to do that. I see how media can be at this day and age like mass put out by a code by an AI that just has people penciling in their name. But again, I'm just speculating.
Yeah, and it was actually worse than that. I got the job. I applied for a job at the Examiner, an online supposed newspaper, to see if I could do one thing, put out a single news story that was true, and I couldn't do it. But what was worse, I had to go find the top trending story if I wanted to get paid, rewrite the title using the same words, rewrite the body of the article using the same keywords at least 6 to 8 times. So I started to think, this relates to what you're talking about, Zach. Who the hell is writing the first article? Because every reporter in the world is doing what I'm doing in one way, shape, or form. Somewhere in the world, that article was generated. And I'm with you. I think AI generates it. Remember back in the days when we used Microsoft Outlook, and like you go into work and it'd say, oh, well, you have 2 meetings today, and you know, you've got this next week and you've got this the week after. I've always imagined that somewhere in this world there's the black occultist, you know, Outlook. Well, there's two false flags due today. They got to sum to these numbers. They're part of this cycle. You know, something like that is going on. There's really no other option. How it gets done, I don't know, but I think I'm with you. I am of a mind that AI has been online a lot longer than we think.
Yeah. And again, it's not just, I mean, these cookie cutter templates for work are not just for journalists. I mean, I used to be a school teacher, and that's how I felt. Like you get the lesson plan and they just want you to follow the lesson plan. And it's like, you might as well just have a robot do this.
Yep.
So,
memorization and regurgitation is not learning.
Absolutely. Schools are truly indoctrination centers, and that's very obvious.
Truly. But Jason, did you have something more? Because I think Zach wanted to finish out something on Baltimore. How much time do we have in the first hour?
We're at 45. There is something I want to bring up for hour 2, but I'll do that when we're wrapping up, because I don't want to get into it in hour 1.
All right, Zach, do you want to whack Baltimore further?
You know, the Baltimore thing, if you can really just remember the 86 piece, you can probably wake up a few friends and family. If you can remember that 128 piece, the bridge claps, again, bridge claps equals 128. If you run the alphabetic order in reverse, Maryland equals, and maritime, I don't want to go on that route. Just remember the 128 and 86 thing. Sometimes I know you're talking to people, you give them more than one number, they start to get the deer in the headlights look. I've learned that over the years. They can really follow one number. A lot of times if I'm talking to somebody, I go to the second number, I just lose them. I'm just like, God, that's so interesting. How many people have the same reaction? But here, the big theme in this one's been 201. We just passed the anniversary of the establishment of the Church of Satan, which was April 30th, 1966. Of course, it's credited to Anton LaVey. If you want to look in, you'll see that Anton LaVey died in history 201 days from his birthday. And when he died, it was also 201 days from the sitting Pope's birthday. And I forgot to mention, just the 2 words, Catholic Pope, also equate to 201. And again, that's who the Jesuits serve. And Pope Francis, he's just the master at 201. But with regards to the Church of Satan, a lot of people overlook this. The highest degree of the Church of Satan is mega, M-A-G-A, just like what Trump runs on, like what Ronald Reagan ran on. And when Obama joked at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011, have you ever seen that, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where Obama jokes that Trump will be the next president? He shows him like out in a hot tub in front of the White House and like casino lights on the White House. Do you guys remember that from 2011?
Yeah, actually I do.
So if you go back and look, Obama did that April 30th, 2011, which was the 45th birthday of the Church of Satan. And that's also 45 days before Trump's birthday, June 14th. This year, you had Stormy Daniels' ex-lawyer on the 45th day of her being 45 years old, which again was the Church of Satan's birthday this year. So, by the way, the 45th day of Stormy Daniels' age is the Church of Satan's birthday. You can just 45 right now. This big staged moment, the political theater in the courtroom, New York versus Trump, where it's all unfolding every day by a very ritualistic code. But it's a big 45 thing. And then what came out of his testimony is that Trump didn't use hush money, which was the big tagline for all of this. But again, Trump, I've been joking lately because I've been joking lately that maybe the way to get this work just out in front of more people is I notice how many Christians for Trump there are in the United States. And I just find it humorous. They're literally cheering for this guy who's the walking billboard for the Church of Satan, even if you don't recognize the mega part and the ritual with what Obama did back on their 45th birthday. But people don't realize this. The first tenet of Satanism is to worship yourself. And you can't do a better job of that than Donald Trump. So, again, I mean, he's just it. And people don't understand how scripted and far out his presidency is. And by the way, for all the people out there who don't take advantage of this knowledge, you really need to, because it was so lucrative this year, yet again, with the Masters. Again, for people who don't know the diversity of my work, I'm talking about news, sports, elections, politics, how things are rigged. So often you can see it before it happens. The other week when there was the big earthquake in the Northeast on April 5th, with the epicenter reportedly in White House, New Jersey, on number 45's golf court, we looked at that earthquake. And then we looked at the first time a professional tournament was there, and it was the most glorious thing to just see the sick ritual with a pattern that I bet if we go back and listen to Crow and I talk in 2016, I'm talking about Donald Trump in 88, because it's been nonstop with Trump in 88 since then. From the first pro tournament at that course where the earthquake happened to the earthquake was exactly 88 weeks later on the nose, and Trump equals 88. And again, Oprah asked Trump in 1988 if he'd like to run for president. And there's a reason there's 88 recognized constellations. It's a big time number, like how they time travel at 88 miles per hour and Back to the Future. Yes. But Trump loves 88. And this happened right before the 88th Masters, where they had Gary Player at age 88 do the inaugural tee-off. And there was only one guy in the whole tournament whose name equaled 88, and it was Scotty Scheffler who won it, who's right by from where that golf course is. Now, people say, well, that was easy to call. He's so great, and he was the favorite. Yeah, well, we didn't just have Scotty Scheffler to win the tournament exactly 44 weeks after his birthday when earthquake equals 44, but we also had the correct guy for second place, who was the Swede, the rookie Swede. We thought he'd do very well. And why did we think he would do well? Well, because funny enough, the guy who brought him up, Henrik Stenson, won the tournament at Trump's course exactly 88 weeks earlier. And you'd never believe it, but that earthquake happened on Henrik Stenson's birthday. So we said, okay, there's this Swede in it who's got all this height that's a rookie. He's going to perform well. It's obvious that they're connected. And then also it happened on 4-5 in a big 45 ritual synced up with the two Japanese stars. So we said at the beginning of the tournament that it was either going to be Morikawa or Matsuyama. Again, that's a lot of stuff to catch people up on, but we've been taking advantage of rig PGA, rig sports for a long time. We've shown how they sync up these Japanese golfers with the tributes to Hiroshima and Nagasaki again and again. Again, that happened in 45. So we said, let's watch on day one who performs well out of those two. Sure enough, it was Morikawa, and he finished right there in third place. We thought all of those guys at the start of the tournament had a great narrative to all be at the top. You can bet golf in different ways. I'm not trying to turn people into gamblers, by the way. I'm just trying to help people understand how rigged the game is. from your rigged Super Bowl. But by the way, this year, if you guys want to go back and watch my live Super Bowl coverage, first thing I pointed out, because we knew the whole game was going to be about 19, we said, you just watch this. The Super Bowl began with the 49ers taking the field 19 minutes after the hour, led out by their star receiver runner, number 19. We knew the Chiefs were going back-to-back for the first team to do it in 19 years, while Joe Montana was 67 years old, the 19th prime, when he wore number 19 with the Chiefs, and the Chiefs beat the Niners in the 1920 season in the Super Bowl as well. But again, you guys, the point is, it's not an accident that the Super Bowl ended with McCole Hardman catching the game winner and his 19th career touchdown. And it's not an accident that McCole Hardman equals 58, and he won Super Bowl 58 with his reception. There's so much to say about all this, and I can be tangential, but again, sometimes I just like to spit out little simple things real quick, because I know people are watching the Masters, and I know they're watching the Super Bowl. Last year, there was one Spaniard to win the tournament on Seve Ballesteros' death anniversary, a Spaniard who won it back when he was alive. Every year since Seve Ballesteros has died and the tournament ends on his birthday, a Spaniard wins. So it's about understanding ritual, history, numbers, dates, and who's pulling the strings on these things. This weekend at the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs, they call it the Run for the Roses, which equals 201. It's the 150th Kentucky Derby. It's funny. There's only one horse in the race with a 150 name, and it's getting some hype, and it's from Japan. And again, Japan's the house of the rising sun. But there's several other narratives. The point I'm just making is, you learn these numbers, you'll see how they structure the rigged sports, how they structure the rigged election. Case in point, this year, the 60th U.S. presidential election. I know we got to cut this at the top of the first hour, so I want to get this in there for the first hour listeners. The upcoming 60th presidential election. The first ever Jesuit Ignatian year went from May 20th, 2021 to July 31st, 2022. That's the day in history Ignatius of Loyola was shot with a cannonball, May 20th, to the day in history that he died. So it ran more than a typical calendar year. The other year, Billy Cannon, the NFL great, died on Cannonball Day, May 20th. This year, the judge Eileen Cannon first requested that Trump be in her courtroom on May 20th. Trump's Jesuit educated at Fordham. Eileen Cannon wanted Trump in her courtroom on Cannonball Day. You pay attention year after year, they're doing these kind of rituals. You can see it's the Jesuits. But
we're going to prep to wrap hour one. I'm going to offer you something, Zach. I haven't vetted this out yet, but we had Wayne McCroy on, and Wayne never misses. Very rare if Wayne misses. He said he saw footage of the Key Bridge with the comet Ponds Brook in the background. Well, ponds can be bridge and brook is water. If that's true, that's a periodic comet. And I've been meaning to take a look, but I'd be willing to bet that if that is true, that the Ponds Brook could be, and it should be true, visible in the sky when all that happened. If you roll that back to the last time the comet was here, I'd be willing to bet it's with a bridge collapse. But as we wrap up hour one, when we come back, I'm just going to ask an opening question, Zach. So think about this till we come back. Do these people die on command? We got to have a death here 201 days later or 201 weeks later. Just think about that. Jason, anything you want to add before I wrap it?
Can I get in a few more things about the upcoming election too?
We got to push it over into this next hour.
Okay.
So if you've done it, and I'll be very surprised if you haven't, anything you can add about the Sandy Hook incident, because they seem to be doing a damned good job of trying to get people to stop talking about it, which makes me think there must be something important there.
Sandy Hook was compared to the Dunblane massacre, which got gun rights taken away in the UK. From the Dunblane massacre to Sandy Hook is exactly 201 months on the nose. And that's not an accident. I can't think of Lenny Posner's wife. Her name is 201 in Gematria, the one that's after undermining the First Amendment. They've taken down so many of my channels. A lot of people so here's a good one too. In Hebrew, the word for light is 201. In English, the word for light is 56. Sandy Hook was established in 1956. The shooting happened 56 years later. Adam Peter Lanza, his full name in Gematria is 56. So is coronavirus. So is COVID vaccine. You might recall that the COVID vaccine went live in the US on December 14th, the anniversary of Sandy Hook, a different type of shots. They said the first person to get vaccinated in the US was Sandra Lindsay, Sandy. 56, we didn't talk about coronavirus, but everything was 56 in coronavirus. Gavin Newsom equals 56, Jesuit educated. He said, first governor to lock down the state, he said, we're locking down California because 56% will get the virus in 8 weeks, which is 56 days. Donald Trump, 2020 was 56 years after his Jesuit education began at Fordham. Cuomo was the 56th governor of New York. Jenny Durkin, the 56th mayor of Seattle, the first mayor with a case of COVID. Tom Hanks, born in 56, doing the Elvis movie when Elvis got the polio vaccine on live TV in 56, who recorded for Sun Record Studio. Again, it's a huge topic. I know you got to wrap it up, but 56 is a number we did not talk about here, but another high Jesuit ritual number. Society of Jesus equals 56. The Jesuits' formal title, Washington, D.C. equals 56. Anthony Fauci equals 56. Jesuit educated. 56 signers on the Declaration of Independence. Nancy Pelosi. Yeah.
Hold these thoughts. I got to wrap up so we can run our hour ones in certain places. I'm going to wrap up hour one of episode 578. Hour one is free to everybody at Crrow777radio.com. That is CRROW777radio.com. Members know to log in for the full episode. Members get access to all the forums. They can create forums, all the comments sections, and they can stream my 2-hour film called Shoot the Moon, covering all my telescopic work, 5 lunar waves, and the first filming of the sun we do not see. With that, I'd like to wish everybody out there a happy, healthy, and higher-minded new era. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to be back with Zach Hubbard for hour 2. There it is, man. Cheers. All right. Sorry, we run in a couple places where it
Recording
has to come in at a time limit. So we're going to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes, Zach, to pee and grab a coffee, and then we're going to pick up.
I'll do that too, because I haven't eaten anything yet today. So I'll get a little snack here. And then I have a lot more about the election that needs to be said and just what they're setting up. So we'll be right back
Okay,
then.
so we'll take 10 then. If you got to grab something to eat, you can just mute your mic and leave this open.
All right, 10 minutes. Sounds good.
If you choose.
All right, sounds good.
All right, we all good?
I muted my mic too soon. Whoops. Yeah, we're all good. 10 minutes. Just so you guys know, I'm back when you guys are.
I'm here, but I don't think Crow's back yet.
Shut the door, please. All right, I'm back, guys.
I'm here.
Present and accounted for.
Actually, let me look up real quick what episode you were on, Zach. You
I have it
did.
memorized. It was 11:20 and the second hour of 28. And the 28 was the epic 9/11 episode.
So actually, you're exactly right. The other one doesn't list, but that would have been June 5, 2016 was the one, excuse me. And the other one was August 18, 2016.
So it's been almost 8 years.
That's what I was thinking. So I'll say episode 20, episode 11, but let's jump back in. You ready to fire on all cylinders, Zach?
I'm ready when you guys are.
You're always ready to fire on all cylinders.
Recording in progress.
Here we go, guys. All right, now welcome back to Crrow777 Radio. This is hour 2 of episode 578. Jason Lindgren is back, as is Zach Hubbard. Zach first appeared on Crrow777 Radio on episode 11. He returned on episode 20. Then he did a second hour on another episode. But it's interesting to go back sometimes and look at where people have come from. In case you haven't noticed, this man's got an encyclopedic knowledge which is second to none. Consider what it means to be able to pick out the 200 and something prime, or how many weeks and months after an event, and then to be able to correlate it. It's really quite an astonishing talent. But anyhow, welcome back, Jason.
Hello.
All right, Zach, why don't you tell folks one more time where they can find your work before we jump back in?
Yeah, I have my own website, GematriaEffect.news. GEMATRIA is how you spell Gematria, and then effect with an E.news.
All right, I'm just going to lead with one quick thing. I know Jason has somewhere he wants to go. I know Zach has somewhere he wants to go. But when we're rattling off all these correlations in the first hour, this person dies 201 days or, this many weeks. It's almost like either there's two options from a common sense point of view. They died, it happened to be right, and they announced it. Or let me rephrase that. On this day, there will be thousands of events. They picked this one to represent, or it's scheduled to occur. Do you have a point of view on which of those it would be?
Again, I'm not sure, but no doubt there's high ritual in the numbers with celebrity death. The other year people made fun of me because I predicted that the Queen was going to die at age 96 on the 140th day of the year, and that didn't exactly go that way. She ended up dying at age 96 on the day leaving 140 days left in the year, which was exactly 201 days after she was diagnosed with COVID in the headlines. But yeah, I don't know if the Queen actually died on the day they finally reported it. I understood why they did. It's a lot to explain, but Queen of England equals 140 for the 140 piece of that. Like Jimmy Carter, they tell us Jimmy Carter's alive right now, but I mean, they wheeled him out months ago for his wife's funeral, and it looked like Weekend at Bernie's. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for a long time, people were wondering what was going on with her, and then they announced her dead on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and then she was replaced by the Catholic Amy Coney Barrett. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg also died 187 days after her birthday, which is a number associated with homicide, but also a very interesting number in Gematria. Washington, D.C. equals 187, as does George Washington, as does Society of Jesus, as does Holy Roman Empire, and the list goes on. Paris, France is another 187 where a lot of the founders studied. But yeah, I don't have the definitive answer to your question. I can just explain the ritual, and sometimes we can even see why people die before they do. Back when we were last doing interviews, sadly, we saw Prince's death coming when Vanity died the day of the Grammys, and Prince did that song Black Donald Trump and died 201 days before the Pope on the Queen's birthday when his name's Prince and is associated with royalty. But yeah, back to you, Crow, because I can't exactly answer your question.
All right. Jason, I'm going to let you get your thing in because once Zach gets going, he's putting out a few thousand rounds a minute. So what was it you wanted to cover, Jason?
Well, he did get some in at the end of hour one. I don't know if there's more to it, but I'm noticing that the mainstream is making a very concerted effort to bury Sandy Hook in any discussion at all. Just making sure that it can't be discussed anymore. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Because I think if they're trying to get rid of it, there's obviously a damn good reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, people did great. I was not a YouTuber when Sandy Hook happened, but the Sandy Hook coverage and the censorship that came out of that's what really inspired me to start putting a message out there before there wasn't a chance to speak out anymore, because I could really see censorship coming through. If you guys recall, in 2012, that's when Google took down all the people questioning vaccines, and then Sandy Hook happened, and then there was this real push in the media to censor people online. Just like there constantly has been ever since then, and there is way more censorship, and I've lost more work over Sandy Hook than anything else. But yeah, I continue to talk about Sandy Hook. This whole Alex Jones trial they just had was such a joke, and there were several 201s in that, and you might recall Robbie Parker got awarded $120 million, and of course his name's 120. But yeah, Sandy Hook has the 56 and the 201 all over it. And these are high hallmarks of the Jesuits in their ritualism. I told you about how the nation's first major gun control came after the MLK assassination 201 days later. Again, MLK, or not MLK, but Sandy Hook and Dune Blaine, 201 months apart. Gun rights did get taken away in the UK after Dune Blaine. Hasn't happened really still in the U.S. There's been more infringements on the Second Amendment, no doubt, but we still haven't lost our right to bear arms all the way. We are losing more and more. Like, I'm out in Washington State. You know, I still have a good assortment in my closet, but I can't buy them at the gun store anymore. They got banned last year. You know, Canada the other year on April 19th, the story of the Mountie driving up and down Route 102 on Ignatius Loyola Day, Mr. 201. If you guys remember that story from 2020, the guy who hijacked the Mountie car and was shooting people all over, and then Canada had their gun rights undermined.
Let me ask you something real quick, because you just brought it up. So you're showing how they use the reciprocal or the reversing of a number. To me, that relates to this idea. If it's like 9/11. If I can see 9/11 in a thing, then whether it's good, bad, neutral, or anything, I know the energy exists as a possibility because it's there. Now, when you see 102 forward and then you see 201 backwards, they both still sum to 3. In other words, any summing to 3 must relate to the energy that exists as a base where they start from. Did I say that in a way that you can understand?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully understand what you're saying. Manly P. Hall, his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, is where I first got my bearings a little bit on this idea of letters and numbers and words. And when I first started looking at things, he has a book on the digits 1 through 10 and master number 11. And he explains how, like, 1 is the individual and 2 is the coming together like a couple naturally, and 3 is the creation of offspring. And then the next phase of life after you procreate is you die, which is why 4 is associated with death. But he makes a big point about 3 in creation. Jesuit Georgetown, their motto is both into one, kind of like 201, like the Twin Towers become 0 before they can become One World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And
that's reflect the idea you're expressing is proven true through nature and just regular.
Sure, like 2 parents have 1 child, unless they have twins or triplets, but we get the idea. But again, both the parents become this individual. And I kind of feel like that's the Jesuit game, is kind of like use conflict in society to destroy that thing or those things and then bring about the thing they want, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yep.
So
we've got to get, have you read James Shelby Downard, Can Kill 33?
I have not.
we've got to get you a copy of King Kill 33.
Okay.
Like, you could probably we interview there's a man named Michael Hoffman who's still alive, who was basically trained by James Shelby Downard. Of all the things I've ever run across in my life, I have not learned more than I learned from James Shelby Downard. He gets into JFK, so many things. But Michael Hoffman, who we interview from time to time, was the holder of all this and the editor of all this. And he puts out a newsletter. My point is, with your knowledge base applied to what James Shelby Downard showed, having witnessed firsthand how this country was put together, I think you might have a secret weapon in your pocket. So we've got to get you a copy of King Kill.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I need to look into it.
Yeah. Jason, did you have anything else? Because I know Zach wanted to get into, I think, what was it, the election coming?
I want to talk more about the upcoming election and the parallels that the media is now really drawing to 1968. I've been drawing these parallels for a long time. Now the media is doing it because of the university protests. But yes, okay. This is the 60th U.S. presidential election. And if you think about the elections with 60 in U.S. history, they were 1860 and 1960. And one gave us Lincoln and the other gave us JFK. Of course, they're both assassinated. In Gematria, Donald Trump equates to 60. Again, his wife, the day his ex-wife fell down the stairs and died 45 years after their marriage, but that was exactly 60 weeks into the first ever Jesuit Ignatian year. And of course, you've been listening to this whole stream. We've tied together the Jesuits, the Church of Satan, the ritualism, how it comes together with Trump, who runs on MAGA, who's Jesuit educated at Fordham. This year, the election's on an important day to Jesuit history. It's on Remember, the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes Day, which is the day leaving 56 days left in the year, of course. And so, again, when this election started to really raise my eyebrows was the day that RFK Jr. got in the race, because I thought, you got to be kidding me. Of all days to get in, RFK Jr., really, today? He got in the race officially when he filed his paperwork. If people want to go back and look, it was April 5th, 2023, the day he filed his paperwork. That day is interesting for multiple reasons. For one, it's 144 days after Arturo Sosa's birthday. That is the leader of the Jesuit order. Arturo Sosa, born November 12th, 1948, born the same year as Israel. It matters that it's 144 days after his birthday that he gets in the race because his father was killed running for office, and his father's official time of death is 1:44 a.m., June 6th, 1968. JFK, he met with the Pope the year he died. He met with the Pope July 2nd. From July 2nd to November 22nd, that's a total span of 144 days. And JFK also lost his infant child right before he died. A lot of people don't know this, but JFK's infant child died August 9th, the day leaving 144 days left in the year. 144. It's kind of like the date 14/4, the 14th day of the 4th month, the day Lincoln was shot, who blamed the Civil War on the Jesuits. If you spell out April 4th as a word, April, and spell out 4th, F-O-U-R-T-H, it equates to 144. Just like Jesuit order. Earlier, I talked about how Jesuit order, the Jesuit order equates to 201, which is true. But without the Jesuit order also has the 144. And for example, when the Jesuits came out of suppression, they came out of suppression 144 days after James Madison's birthday. Again, James Madison's the only 201 president. 144 days after his birthday, the Jesuits come out of suppression. The United States of America also equates to 144 for the record. So is the word corporation, and that's pretty much really what this nation is. These things aren't an accident, but it's all been cleverly encoded in the language, in the calendar, in the high ritualism. 144, of course, is a biblical number as well, the chosen. And the square root of 144 is 12, and that's the number of time we're on this Catholic calendar that's 12 months rather than the 13-month lunar calendar. 12 hours in the morning, 12 hours in the evening, the way we tell time. But 144, Jesuit hallmark, it's also a time number. Every day there's 1,440 minutes in a day, 1440. The phrase Kennedy curse equates to 144. Kennedy curse is also 144. President Biden, funny enough, is 144, and he has the same birthday as RFK. They're both born on November 20th. When Georgetown simulated the election in 2020, for people who don't know about this, look it up. It's called the Transition Integrity Project. Tip, June 12th, 2020, 144 days for the election. One of the main scenarios they simulated is that Biden would narrowly beat Trump. Trump would refuse to step down, saying he was cheated, which would lead to a deadly altercation between Americans. Hello, January 6th, where Georgetown boarded up first. But again, that simulation was 144 days before the election. By the way, Joe Biden's from Scranton, Pennsylvania, where one of the nation's Jesuit universities is, and that's why The Office, which has the Jesuit prep school flag in every episode, ran 201 episodes. For the record, just that hit show on NBC, little Jesuit hallmark, 201 episodes. But again, Biden lost his wife and daughter in Jesuit rituals back in 72, and then lost his son when he was 72 years old. Jesuit order the small way is 72 rather than 144, kind of like how Kennedy met with the Pope on 7-2 and then died a span of 144 days later. So, okay, this Kennedy thing and RFK Jr. getting in the race 144 days after the Superior General's birthday. Donald Trump, from his June 14th birthday to the election November 5th, is 144 days later. And again, if you go back to the headline from November 5th, 2016, right before the election in 2016, the headline that day was that Trump, there was a failed assassination attempt on him in Nevada on November 5th, 2016. And you might recall in the months before that, there was this hoax story that was finally solved where somebody put this really fancy tombstone for Donald Trump as if he died in Central Park, and they etched on the tomb, "Made America Hate Again." By the way, Donald Trump, when he first became president back in 2017, he posed at the Vatican with the first Jesuit Pope, Pope Francis, on May 24th, 2017, the 144th day of the year, again with the first Jesuit Pope. So this is a big Jesuit number, 144. Jesuit order is 144. The word Jesuit alone is 78. Donald Trump will turn 78 this year. And it's interesting because he's Trump, and tarot cards, which are way older than people know, but the oldest known tarot deck at this day and age goes back to Italy as well, with all roads leading to Rome. And that's because these people destroyed a lot of history and then wanted to take credit for what wasn't theirs. But anyway, the oldest tarot deck goes back to Italy. And there's 78 cards in the tarot deck. The top cards are Trump cards. You might recall there was a documentary made after 9/11 about one of the suicide victims and how they fell, look like the hangman card. Just for the record, tarot cards equals 119, like how that date can be written 11/9. Donald Trump was called president-elect in the early hours of November 9th, 119. On the anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which equals 45, like Mike Pence coming back to the Church of Satan ritual on its 45th birthday with Obama, 45 days for his birthday. But again, I'm getting tangential here. I actually lost my train of thought, so I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, let me ask you. I'm going to ask you just a couple questions. First of all, the first one is, when we find a guest that's very impressive and relates to what we do here, we often have them back as a recurring guest. Do you have any interest in being a recurring guest here?
Yeah, that would be great for me, because in the areas I navigate, man, my censorship has been clamped down so hard. It's depressing to be somebody who speaks out at this day and age. I need to figure out how to amp up my message, because again, for a lot of us, it's like in 2018 I could get hundreds of thousands of views. Today I feel good. I'm like, wow, my video got 8,000 views. Amazing. So yeah, I'd love to be a recurring guest.
All right, that's settled. Now, you've mentioned a handful of numbers that stand out as important. Are there 4, 5, 10 numbers that you feel stand out as key numbers? Like, let me frame the question.
Sure, I get the question.
So I want to frame it for the audience. In basic numerology, there's an idea that you're going to use the numbers 1 to 9, but 11, that's a special number. 22, that's a special number. 33, that's a special number. And in standard numerology, they're not just special, they have all these meanings and get treated slightly different. That's for the audience. So in your mind, Zach, are there a handful or more numbers that really stand out to you as being crucially important?
Absolutely. I'm going to answer that question, but I just remembered the final piece of what I was supposed to say about the last thing about the election and Trump turning 78. Okay, so I got to get this final piece in here and then answer the question. The name Kennedy equates to 78. So Trump's about to turn 78. You got this Kennedy in the race. He gets in at a very specific thing, synced up with the leader of the Jesuits. And again, Jesuit is 78. Order Out of Chaos is 78. When they declared the pandemic, it was 78 days after Fauci's birthday. This is another special number. But there's another presidential name that also equals 78, and that's Cleveland. And Trump had his 2016 convention in Cleveland. Grover Cleveland's been compared to Donald Trump because they both have brides that are kind of mail order brides from the same part of the world, and they're both heavy set and a few other parallels. But Grover Cleveland was the only split-term president. He was number 22, and he was number 24. And here we are in 2024. You might recall that Trump got criticism for announcing so early officially for 2024. He did that at the end of 22. So at the end of 22, he announces he's running in 24. The Grover Cleveland parallel, the way these people love to make history repeat itself. There really is a lot more I could say about the election. We can save it for later. But to answer your question about a top 5 numbers. So I've been killing myself since 2020. I put out my last book, Number Games, in the middle of 2020. It's called Number Games, 9/11 to Coronavirus. There's a lot to that book. But I was working with such urgency to get it out there because it was, to me, it felt like it was of the moment. I was hoping it was going to wake up the world and they wouldn't submit to this agenda. But I spelled out in that book why they were going to wind down their pandemic as soon as the year of the tiger came around, which is exactly what they did. As soon as the year of the tiger hit, they just started to wind down the pandemic in the middle of winter. I just laughed. I was like, look how dumb it is, you guys. Supposedly this killer pandemic, and they're just going to, all of a sudden, it's just over while it's still winter time when people get sick. This flu season. But again, it's just straight up mockery what they do to us. But I've been working on a book since then because since I wrote that book, I've learned so much more about 201 and how long its history is. And just, again, we started to get into it a little bit in this stream. There's still so much more to say. But the problem is I've been trying to write a short book where I cannot exceed 150 pages, where I also get out the message. And I have not been able to achieve this in the last 3 years to the way I want it to be. So I've been writing and rewriting and editing and cutting and taking this out and adding this in and reshuffling this. I've been a disaster with this third book. They say the third one's the charm. It hasn't been for me in terms of writing books. I got 2 out there. The third one, I've even just put it on the side right now, and I'm trying to write children's books, and I'm trying to answer the exact question you just asked me, because what I'm doing with these children's books, I'm trying to create, and by the way, they're aimed at children, but also at adults, again, because the knowledge is just as profound, but I figure most adults this day and age are watching cartoons and playing video games anyway, so what's the difference? I just saw a video came into my feed about how this guy's mad that the sword animation is not bigger and it has like 5 million views. And I'm like, how does that get 5 million views? People are mad about sword animations. I'm talking about how our nation's being. Anyway, I'm trying to get it in the top 5 of what the numbers are. And, you know, here, just to give you an example, the thing that I'm just really flowing with right now is the number 54, because there's so many ways to connect it. If you've ever seen They Live, by the way, They Live came out 201 days after Roddy Piper's birthday, the star of the film. He tweeted on September 27th, the big Jesuit day, that the movie's a documentary. Then he ended up dying on Ignatius of Loyola's death anniversary, July 31st. But 54 is huge, okay? Somebody could come and argue it's not a top 5 number in terms of this number study, but I can argue it is. And here's why. Because I'm trying to get people to understand that the Jesuits have given us the language in the calendar, and they are at the point of this spear of what's going on in this world. There's a reason that day in and day out, I'm showing how these rituals are synced with the Pope and the Superior General. The Jesuit headquarters is the House of the Jesuit at Building 54. And They Live, the enemy of the world is Cable 54. Jesuit Georgetown was established when John Carroll was 54 years old. The alphabetic order in numerology, what I used to call the most pure cipher, and still probably where I do the majority of my work, Jesuit order equates to 54, so does John Carroll. If you write out the word sun, S-U-N, it's also 54. The Jesuit logo is the sun. This 54 number just goes all throughout history with like the biggest mockery you've ever seen. Osama bin Laden supposedly died on his 54th day of being 54 years old. The word terrorism also equates to 54. It's a lot to explain, but people should look into JFK's weather control speech from 1961, and then what Lyndon Johnson said at Jesuit Holy Cross about who controls the weather controls the world, when the first act of weather warfare is admitted to ever in history on the Jesuit order's birthday, August 15th, 1952, the Lynmouth flood. Right now, sometimes I wonder if they really do have to bring about a World War III, or if they can just keep doing what they've been doing with the weather warfare, which almost everyone's oblivious to. But Barack Hussein Obama, after all the years of scaring us about Saddam Hussein and bin Laden, then we got Barack Obama by the numbers. But people should look at where I almost called him Osama bin Laden, where Barack Obama was on his 54th day of being 54 years old. He was at the closing day of Agenda 2030. And by the way, Agenda 2030 is a continuation of Agenda 21, where the signing day for the participating nations of Agenda 21 was June 13th, the day leaving 201 days left in the year. They said the silver lining of COVID was that a lot of the Agenda 21, 2030 goals got in line. Isn't that funny? But, and that's down in Rio de Janeiro, which equals 201. But I could argue that, of course, all the 201s, I've been working on this book on 201 for 3 years. So I really think it is actually the pinnacle number that people should learn about, because almost no one knows anything about it. Somebody out there's like, what about 33? Yeah, 33 is huge in rituals. Almost everyone knows about it. Masonry, secrecy, order, federal, they all equal 33. Masonry's fixated on the 33 bones of the human vertebrae with Kundalini. Both people and person in society, they all equal 33. There's a reason they're always putting 33 in the programming. It's the master teacher number. They're constantly teaching humanity to submit and give up their rights and liberties and just send in some more tax dollars. So yeah, you can make an argument all day that 33 is a very important number to learn about. The House of the Temple in DC is at the address 1733, 33 pillars on the outside, each 33 feet tall. Mason equals 17, Masonry equals 33, going with that 1733 address. But anyway, the 54 thing I got cut off on, there's so much with 54, but it flows through so many things. And then it goes back to like the It Club back in the day for celebrities who'd be at Studio 54, or right now I can't even think, is it Club 54, Studio 54, one of those two things. Elvis Presley, one of the biggest music stars ever, recorded for Sun Record Studios, did his first concert in 54. Just the other year, the Golden Globes in Gematria equals 54, which is interesting because a Golden Globe's like the sun, because in alchemy, the sun is gold. But the day after the Golden Globes, when the best actor's the Elvis actor, Elvis Presley just drops dead at 54 on 54 date numerology. Right now, everyone's so focused on Diddy and what he's going through at age 54. Diddy has the same Jesuit prosecutor from Georgetown, established by 54-year-old John Carroll, at age 54, as R. Kelly did at age 54. And R. Kelly got sentenced to prison on September 27th, the day the Jesuits were recognized by Roman history. But yeah, literally the same Jesuit prosecutor from Georgetown for both men at age 54. About 6 months ago, the Black Godfather, God, his name's escaping me right now. Everything's escaping me right now about him, but he died. And when he died, Diddy was about to turn 54, and so was Jay-Z. And I pointed out, I said, look at this. He's dead 54 years after his record label that equals 54. And a picture of him with Diddy and Jay-Z. I said, you better watch out for those two when they turn 54. It could be a rough year like R. Kelly. Exactly what I said in the video. Now, Diddy's literally getting prosecuted by the same Jesuit prosecutor. But it goes on and on. There's a reason why in 54, the Bilderberg Conference came and CERN was established in 54. And a million other things I'm not talking about right now. But the word sun is 54. And again, all of these rituals are on this calendar that's synced up with what's above, and especially the sun. And just massive number with ritual after ritual. And again, sun, Jesuit order, and John Carroll, all big 54s. So anyway, 201, 54, they're definitely in my top 5 for the message I'm trying to get out right now. Where do you go from there? God, I mean, I brought up 187 earlier. There's such a long history of 187 and death. You know, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg made it popular through rap music. Then Dr. Dre's son ends up committing suicide 187 days after Dre's birthday. What I was just talking about with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then a list of about 1,000 other people connected to the capital city, which equals 187.
Isn't that the penal code number for murder?
In California, in some states it is. Not every state, but it is highly associated with homicide. And you follow this code, you'll see how it's all over with death.
All right, well, I'm going to make you an offer here. Rose just notified me that she kicked you a copy of King Kill 33. Are you interested in it's not very long. Are you interested in reading King Kill 33 and then coming back on to do episode to give us your point of view?
Yeah. How long is the book?
It's not really a book. It's I don't know. Rose might tell me in
Oh,
chat.
no, it's like 15 pages.
Oh, easy. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a way to send it to me? I can give you my address.
Rose already sent it to you. It's in your inbox.
Okay. I guess she looked at my P.O. box. Nice work.
I think she emailed it to you.
Oh, email. Yeah. Oh, digital. Oh, perfect. Yeah. Happy to read that.
Yeah.
That's easy.
So, you're bringing up 54, and see, I think about numbers in a very kind of kindergarten way, but it works for me. When I encounter the number 9, to me, it's completion. That's what its general vibration for me is. Now, as an example, you brought up 88 earlier. 88, absolutely. If there is anything in Hollywood about time travel, and this is 100% of the time, 88 will be associated. The movie that's coming to mind is Buckaroo Banzai. Go look at Buckaroo Banzai and the use of 88. By the way, the Griffith Observatory and the guy who played in Back to the Future, the Doc character, Emmett Brown, he's always being electrocuted by lightning in these films. But my point is that 88 is clearly associated with time travel from their point of view. Zach also brought up the number 4, and he told you why, and I think rightly, it got its early association with death, but that's only one side of it. 4, while it's the stablest of numbers, the flip side of that, the media uses as a death number to symbolize death. And if there's 2 4s, it's like death's doors kind of thing. But Zach, have you heard about the WEF preparing for disease X?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did that exactly 201 weeks after they declared the pandemic on March 11th. And you want to get technical with numbers. Georgetown equates to 129. 129 is the number 201 in base 8 counting, like the Jesuit order. And then the number 201 becomes 311 in base 8 counting. So they declared the pandemic on 311 after the event 201 simulation. And I didn't mention how the Holy Bible also equates to 201, where a lot of this comes from. And the sister simulation of event 201 was Clade X, which was exactly 666 days before the pandemic. And event 201 was on 10:18, like Luke 10:18, where Satan comes to earth. So, yeah, again, I'm getting tangential, but back to you.
Jason, there's a hole. Do you want to fill it with a question?
Well, should we ask Zach to make a prediction on who's going to be the next president?
I'll bet you I can make the prediction based on listening to him, but let's ask him. Hey, Zach, who do you think's our next president?
Yeah, I've been saying, okay, so I'll tell you 2 predictions I've had for a long time. I've been saying for a long time that I expect Trump to come back as the next Grover Cleveland split term. I'm wondering if in this year we get 2 narratives that pay tribute to history. Again, because we already had a similar story in 2016 where he avoided an assassination on this year's election day. He has all the parallels to Ronald Reagan, who survived an assassination attempt. The Brady bill came out of that. And Donald Trump's always said he's a big Tom Brady fan. It's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I'm thinking they're putting Trump back in for the split term for all the symbolism and the divisiveness. And my other prediction that I've said is, okay, so we have to understand this about Joe Biden. So again, he's elected number 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday in the 59th presidential election. And this is interesting because Pope Francis equals 59. Benedict stepped down on the 59th day of the year to make room for Francis. And again, Catholic equals 46, like there's 46 books in the Catholic Old Testament. John F. Kennedy also equals 59. And again, JFK was number 35, killed on Interstate 35 at age 46. The word Catholic is 35 forwards. The word Catholic is 46 in reverse. You run it the big way, Catholic is 71 forwards, 145 in reverse. There's 145 more chapters in the Catholic Old Testament than Protestant Old Testament, which is why Israel was established on 14/5. Again, State of Israel 201, like the Holy Bible, like the 145 more chapters and a big Jesuit Catholic ritual. But okay, again, JFK did not finish his term. So I have been thinking since, because I had the right prediction that Biden was going to win. Like nobody thought Biden was going to win, but I was like, you guys, you got to look at what they did with the Transition Integrity Project, this whole 46 thing. They're putting Biden in there. He sacrificed his son at age 46, 21 days before the post-birthday. So for as long as I've been saying that they were going to put Biden in there, I've also been saying he's not going to finish the term. And I've been suspecting that somewhere around June 1st, I've been saying this for many years now, June 1st, 2024, I expect Joe Biden to leave early around that time. So we're coming up close on my prediction that's years old now. The reason I said this time is for multiple reasons. Kamala Harris is 59 years old right now, and this is also a number stamped all over Black history. The word slave, Negro, Rasta, blues, all of these words equate to 59. Black History Month typically ends on the 59th day of the year. Motown came out in 59. O.J. Simpson just died 59 days after the last Super Bowl, before the year of Super Bowl 59, in a predominantly Black city, New Orleans, mind you. And they announced O.J.'s death as they were teeing off the Masters. And the last time anyone saw O.J. was the day of the Super Bowl in a Titleist hat, talking about how he's battling cancer and he's almost fine. He's going to be back playing golf real soon. But then they give us the O.J. death as the Masters tees off. And the verses in the Bible that are the most infamous about slavery are Ephesians 6, 5 through 9. 5 through 9, slave, Negro, blues, Rasta. So Kamala's 59 right now, this number that's very connected to Black history. Obama's Secret Service name was Renegade, which equals 59. Obama's name, Barack Obama, equals 76. If you run the alphabetic order the other way, slave, Negro, blues, Rasta, they all equate to 76. Black History Month was recognized by the federal government for the first time in 76. And OJ just died at age 76 as the Masters was teeing off. The word master forwards is 76. The word master or slave in reverse is 76. These numbers come together a lot. But anyway, I'm trying to make the point about how Kamala has this. There's so many parallels because so Barack Obama became the first Black president with Joe Biden. Okay. He was a one-term senator that went to the Oval Office with Biden. Kamala Harris was a one-term senator who went to the Oval Office with Joe Biden at age 56. Obama won the 56th election. Just for the record, Black Lives Matter equals 56. They painted Church Street with Black Lives Matter in D.C. on the 5th day of the 6th month. Again, Washington, D.C. is 56, like Society of Jesus. This whole thing at Columbia started 263 days after Obama's birthday, which is the 56th prime. It's where he went to school. There's a lot to it. But anyway, there's this deeper link with the first Black president through Biden. And could we get the first Black female president also through Biden? For people who don't know this, look it up. This is also part of the prediction for why we've been thinking this. Gerald Ford gave an answer to a young girl back in the 80s about how we'll get the first female president. For anyone who's never seen this, you have to look this up. Type in Gerald Ford, Hoover Library, first female president. A little girl says, Mr. President, how are we going to get the first lady president? He goes, well, let me tell you, little girl, this is how it's going to happen. There's going to be an old man in the White House, and he's going to die. And there's going to be a younger woman who's the vice president, and she's going to be the first female president. The little girl looks mystified, like, how in the world is that the answer? Well, what's crazy is he was in the Herbert Hoover Library, and the day that Herbert Hoover died in history is the exact same day that Kamala Harris was born. So the other thing about June 1st is it's a little bit different in a leap year because we add plus 1 day, but typically June 1st is the 152nd day of the year. Joe Biden equates to 152, and so does Kamala Devi Harris, which is her full name. Pennsylvania is also 152, which is Joe Biden's home state, even though he was senator in Delaware. And when he came into office, coincidentally enough, they had it just right for the 46th president. President's Day that year fell on the 46th day of the year on 15/2. Just going to show how scripted all this stuff is and how controlled it's been for a long time to make all this line up, because it's not happening by accident. But yeah, I've been thinking Joe Biden's gonna depart. And the other thing about June 1st is it's the other day that's like January 6th. It's like 1/6, 6/1. It's like the American Civil War in 1861. They just can't stop talking about January 6th. Washington, D.C., we said has the Gematria 56. You run it in reverse, it equals 61. And 61 is a very special number for sacred geometry. If you're new here, in sacred geometry, it's the number of overlapping circles in the flower of life that represents God. In English, words like Christian, cross, Jesus, Christmas, church, they all equate to 61. Gematria means geometry and language. Society of Jesus, high rituals. I'm not saying definitively that's going to be the day, but I still do think we're going to see Biden leave office one way or another. It could be, another assassination. It could be, who knew, he got the latest disease X. It could be he fell while he was riding his bike. I mean, they could go any way about it. Or maybe he just loses his faculties and they got to move him aside for the upcoming election that's so important because we can't get the insurrectionist back. And for the record, you guys, the word insurrectionist equals 78, like how Trump's about to turn 78. And January 6th was 78 days after Kamala's birthday. But yeah, the things I'm expecting is one way or another, Trump gets back in there as the new Grover Cleveland. And Kamala takes the reins between now and then.
I never knew that Ford had said that, and I did a lookup on what it is he said transcribed, and it is just so. How is it that he said this back in the day, and people didn't go, "What the hell are you talking about, old man?" I mean, it is so concise and to the point. Yeah, I had no idea.
Gerald Ford replaced Richard Nixon by the numbers. Richard Nixon, by the way, his last day there, the day leaving 144 days left in the year, August 9th, coming back to that 144.
You're going to read in King Kill 33, the lead up to that switchover will be part of what's going on. But listen, I'll read it. So what Jack just said, President Ford in a library tells some girl or some young lady, I don't know how old she was, this is what he says. Either the Republican or the Democrat political party will nominate a man for president and a woman for vice president, and the woman and the man will win. So we'll end up with a president, a male, a vice president, a female. And in that term of office, the president will die, and the woman will become president under the law of our Constitution. And once that barrier is broken, from then on, men had better be careful, because they'll have a hard time ever even getting nominated in the future. But that's the way it's going to happen. And I think it will probably come sometime in the next 4 or 8 years. This is 1989, I think.
So the one thing that's off is the time period, the next 4 to 8 years. Now, something that's interesting, I just told you Donald Trump equals 60, which is true. You run it the other way, Donald Trump equals 48. And if Biden doesn't finish his term, Kamala will become number 47, and then Trump could theoretically become number 48. And yeah, for people who don't know, again, the other piece to verify, besides what Crow just did, is look to see that Herbert Hoover died the same exact day Kamala Harris was born, because he delivered those remarks in the Herbert Hoover Library.
It's unreal how much is just done out in the open. But back in those days, our fake government had a lot more trust going for it than it does anymore. But what do you think? Is Trump going to reside over the catastrophic fall?
Again, I think I hope I'm wrong about Trump. I hope I'm incredibly wrong, because I don't think it's good if he gets back in there. It blows my mind that so many people are waiting for him to come back, thinking he's going to save the problems. Again, he was the guy who was in office when America became less like America than it had ever been in our lifetimes, and a lot of us saw this coming. But the people make the excuse, well, he had to deal with the pandemic. It's like, no, if you're the leader, like, if I know what I'd do if I was the leader, I'd do the same thing I was doing on my YouTube channel. I'd say, we're not locking down for the demands of the Swiss bankers over a what's the proof? Because some people died in a nursing home in Seattle. This is why the media is going crazy. Whoa, people died in a nursing home. Whoa. So no, I mean it's just Donald Trump, and then again, just the way you see how the two-party system's really made to manipulate people. Because I was pointing it out before we even got our first stimulus check. I said, you guys, you think this is good news? I said, when government prints money, that's what causes inflation. So say you're getting $1,000 check and they're sending one of these out to everybody. Well, who this is bad for is the guy who just retired, who might have $500,000 in the bank, because watch, in no time, his $500,000 is going to be now worth, in terms of today's money, it's going to be worth $400,000. He got 2 stimulus checks for $2,000, but his life savings is worth $100,000 less. How's that work out for him? And again, you got people right now saying, it's just, you see how this game is. But Trump signed off. We could go back to all the rituals of Donald Trump. Here, I'm going to make a point. I'll tell you where I was. April 19th, 2020. I was in my own state, Washington. I went down to the Capitol, Olympia. There was a gathering of largely QAnon people, which is a whole nother 201 thing. But it was a lot of QAnon and Trump people gathering at the Capitol against the mandates. And I went there to give these people a wake-up call about how Donald Trump was part of the same problem they're talking about. And I got a ton of people to just stop and listen. And then some people are saying, here, get up on the stage. It's open mic. I had these men come that were bodyguards with guns, and they stood in front of the mic and they said, you're not going to speak here today at all, because they'd already witnessed what I was turning this crowd. But shoot, the point, what I got the group to listen to was, because it had recently happened. I said, okay, you guys really think Donald Trump is not part of this? I said, pay attention. I said, you tell me where I'm wrong about any of this. And everyone go back and look this up, because these are all facts. The day that coronavirus was first confirmed in the U.S. was January 21st, 2020. And they say that case arrived here January 15th, but it was the headline January 21st, first confirmed case in the world outside of mainland China. And where was it? It was in Bill Gates' backyard. By the way, William Henry Gates, his full name equals 201. He's married to Melinda Gates, who's from a family of Jesuit priests, who has the same August 15th birthday as the Jesuits from France, and her name was Melinda French Gates. All these chosen actors on the world scene. Gates is a special case. But I said, you look at where it's crazy how nobody knows where Donald Trump was the day coronavirus confirmed. Everybody needs to look it up. Donald Trump was in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum on January 21st, 2020, gloating about his trade deal with China. And what day was his trade deal? It was January 15th. So the official story was that case from China arrived in the U.S. January 15th, the day he signed off on the trade deal. And then he's gloating about it at the World Economic Forum, who simulated it on January 21st. Well, January 21st was 222 days from Trump's birthday. 222. All of these things equate to 222. Wuhan coronavirus, World Economic Forum, order out of chaos, New York, New York. And that's where the Event 201 simulation was. And from the day the pandemic was declared, which was just a little further ahead in the future, March 11th, from the day the pandemic was declared back to 9/11, the day the towers came down, that was exactly 222 months later. And this was the main premise of my book, 9/11 to Coronavirus. Lots of information in that book. What they did to Kobe Bryant, the massive 201 death ritual with Kobe, 201 days from Magic Johnson's birthday, and then the Lakers went on to win the finals in the Orlando Magic NBA COVID bubble. It's sick. Anyway, I was there getting these people to understand the significance of Trump being in Switzerland on that day of all places, and showing them how this number thing worked. And I just realized how well it worked in spades. I was like, here I am in like the belly of the beast with like the Trumpaholics, and man, they are listening and getting it. So that's why this knowledge, it doesn't appeal to everybody. But these days, when I end up talking to people on the street, I almost get everybody to stop and listen and ask more questions. And again, Trump is such a puppet on strings. That, again, the whole pandemic was 56, and it was 56 years after his Jesuit education began. You know, and by the way, Trump's Jesuit education began in 64, like the spaces on a chessboard, like how the Illuminati was founded 64 days before supposedly the birthday of this nation. If you guys want to look into International Chess Day, it comes out of Paris, France, the home of the Jesuits, and it's celebrated every year on the 201st day of the year. But yeah, I've been joking lately that I want to just like set up Trump rehabilitation centers for all these people that believe so much in this guy, especially the Christians who don't realize the 6 satanic mega joke. But yeah, I think he's coming back, and I think it's just more signs of the destruction to come. I'll remind people in They Live, in that movie They Live, which is one of the most ultimate predictive programming films, they say they aim to have full control over the world by 2025. And a lot of people forget how that movie begins. It begins with the camera pointed at graffiti in Los Angeles, and the graffiti is a mural of a massive vaccine under the underpass. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's unbelievable. For those that have followed for a while, I think Zach's, excuse me, Zach's the first person I've had on that marks the beginning of COVID, where I mark it, 3/11. I was sitting here all day long. I could sense the negative energy that had been building since the beginning of the year. It was going off the rails. And I forget what it was, but whatever I saw, I realized it's here. So I sat down to write a blog, which I don't do very often. So on this website, the last blog I wrote is on 3/11. It's published just after midnight. You can look at the timestamp because I stayed up late to finish it. But this is the problem that Zach's talking about. So many people sleepwalking, basically, but here's the opportunity. You know, he was talking to them and people were catching on. And that's really, you know, where we're at now. I mean, I don't know what you think, Zach, but the inertia behind everything right now is really quite a thing.
It is. It's for me, it's just hard to see just people just falling into the same traps and still believing in the same characters and not seeing. I've seen it for all my life, how we are mocked. 9/11 was just such a mockery to me. I couldn't believe everyone fell for it. But just right now, the supposed election is supposed to come to these two grumpy old men. One, I honestly got to say, too, I don't think Biden's as senile as he really is. I think that's the party plays. I think that's one of the things our government likes to do is kind of like play dumb, make it seem like everybody's dumber than they are. I think Bush definitely did that when he was in there. I think that's part of the joke, too, just to make it seem like government, these people there are incompetent morons. You go in the post office, they got computers from 20 years ago, and you're like, how is the government always so far behind? I think this is all part of the illusion to make it seem like it's some incompetence thing, and we just need the right people in there. But I just think it's layers and layers of an onion, and it all comes back to mockery and symbolism and high ritual and, of course, the numbers. And I wish people would snap out of it. It makes me sad to see all the young people right now getting sucked into the Antifa psyops they got going on all over the nation. You know, for people don't know, I'm up here from the Pacific Northwest. I said back in 2013, back before my home city, Portland, fell apart, I predicted why I thought the city was going to unravel in the next decade, the symbolism of it, and how I always thought it was weird that my city's nickname is RIP City, RIP City. I was like, why is that our nickname? So now you look at Portland, it's like, God, it all makes sense. So yeah, again, I'm being tangent.
Is that true? I didn't even know that. How in the hell do you get a nickname RIP? What's that supposed to be?
Yeah, exactly. It comes from the basketball team. Actually, the way it happened is just through the Portland Trailblazers, because everyone started calling it Rip City. Because the announcer back then, Bill Schonley, he'd always say, you know, like if you swish the ball, it rips the net. So he called Portland Rip City. But just looking at the way things are, I started to think like I think there was something more to that, and that becoming the household nickname, because that's not the kind of name you want. RIP City.
What else have you recognized about the Golden Gate Bridge? Years ago, I recognized that it's actually standing in as the Golden Gate as it relates to the equinoxes, which I won't get in here, but the fall equinoxes way back in the day in kind of occult or well-educated circles was known as the Silver Gate. The spring equinox, or you know, the actual beginning of the year, is known as the Golden Gate. And I recognized that the way they situated it and the color they painted it, everything, that it was a metaphor for the Golden Gate, which it was named. Have you come across anything that relates, that makes you think that the Golden Gate may have a role to play, like the Hoover Dam or other places that have popped up on radar?
Absolutely. You might recall 2018, it became a viral focus of the truth community, this prediction that the Golden Gate Bridge was going to collapse on August 11th. Do you remember any of that from 2018?
I'm not a big news guy, but I guess I'm.
It was more the online truth community really. I was annoyed because I was the source of where that prediction came from, but that's not the way my prediction was. My prediction was they were going to do something big at Temple Mount, where there's a Golden Gate on August 11th, 2018. And if people forgot what happened, it was an ugly scene there that day. There did end up being something bad at Temple Mount. It was a big day of worship for the Muslims and the Jews, and it was connected to Tisha B'Av, to remember the destruction of the two temples. And the Israeli police fired tear gas all over the Muslim worshipers on Temple Mount. It was just way over the top. But we knew something.
Psyop.
Huh?
That sounds like you got psyop. They took something that you had done, which was pretty much on the money, and they spun it to become something else.
Right. So
social media.
What I was saying though is I said, but also watch the Golden Gate Bridge, because I said the Golden Gate at the time, the Golden Gate entrant around that time, the entrance to Temple Mount that's called the Golden Gate had been shut down, and it had raised Palestinian protests. So that's why all these years later you have these Palestinian protesters on the Golden Gate Bridge. All these things are related. But what I was talking about back in 2018 is Donald Trump had recently been in Jerusalem for Jerusalem Day and declared it the capital. And then after that, they started raising money in Israel with a commemorative coin that has Trump's head on one side and King Cyrus on the other. And then on the other side of the coin, there's also the third temple. You can still buy that coin to raise funds for building the eventual third temple at Temple Mount. But August 11th, the reason I got really zeroed in on that day was because of Tisha B'Av and the Muslim day of worship. But then also, when I was doing that research, I realized August 11th is this really important number in San Francisco history. Alcatraz was opened on that day, a key stretch of road that relates to the Golden Gate Bridge. Robin Williams, big Bay Area comedian who might have said too much about Bill Gates years before his passing, which is a whole nother story. If you guys have, if people know what George Carlin said about the club and a big one, and you're not in it, but a lot of people need to go back and hear Robin Williams' special where he talks about Gates and other things. And keep in mind, Robin Williams is down in big tech area where he knows what's going on with technology. And he gave out a warning about this creepy Bill Gates guy and what he has his plans to just keep tabs on all of society. I mean, it's almost 20 years later now.
How early was that comedy special?
It was in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. If you want to go, you should be able to find it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'd encourage everyone to go back and listen to that. But August 11th, what it really goes back to is Clare, the first follower of St. Francis of Assisi. San Francisco is named after St. Francis of Assisi, just like Pope Francis is. He created the Franciscans, which is the precursor to the Jesuits. But I saw how this August 11th with San Francisco had a lot of history. And it was also fitting in with what I was looking at Temple Mount. So I was drawing this parallel. I said, oh, it's possible that something goes on in San Francisco too. But that wasn't the big focus. But then all these channels ran away with that. And the Golden Gate Bridge was going to blow up on August 11th. And everyone's just, and then that didn't happen. And then people are coming back really like, oh, nothing happened on August 11th. If you guys go back to August 11, 2018, that was also the day of the massive protests in China and Taiwan, where there was the huge crackdown. If you recall that, just major protests that hadn't happened like that before. And I noticed in that news coverage that they mentioned that there's a little island or just right off there where the protests were that's also known as the Golden Gate. So I was like, weird. That's interesting. But yeah, I've been making the point a long time about how, this is one other thing. There's a TV show from years ago called Dig. And in the United States, if you want to dig, you're supposed to dial 811, kind of like August 11th. The show Dig, what it's about is how hardline Zionists want to blow up Temple Mount so that they can build the third temple there to bring about the Jewish Messiah. And the funny thing about the Gematria of Solomon's temple, Herod's temple, and third temple is they all equate to 58. And Donald Trump announced he was running from the 58-story Trump Tower and won the 58th presidential election. And again, Oprah asked him way back in the day if he'd want to run for president back in 88. Oprah, the big way, is 58, and Oprah Winfrey, the small way, is 58. Trump was in an episode of Suddenly Susan years ago in the early 90s on May 8th, 58, where he's the president of the United States. So this predictive programming for Trump to win the 58th election was all over. I brought up the golf course in the last hour, the earthquake on Trump's course on 4-5. That golf course opened in 2004. Yeah, 2004. That was the year Donald Trump turned 58 years old. And what's funny is nuclear weapon in Gematria equates to 58. And again, just to tie something back that we probably talked about way back in 2016, again, 9/11. They called the site where the towers came down. And Trump was a big part of 9/11, talking about his insurance firm up on the 102nd floor, if you go back and look that day. But they called the site of 9/11 Ground Zero. For the record, Ground Zero in Gematria equals 127, like buildings 1, 2, and 7 fell in New York, and they called it the new Pearl Harbor, like Pearl Harbor's December 7th, 1, 2, 7. 127 is the 31st prime, 31's the 11th prime, 11's the master number, New York's the 11th state. A lot of 11s on 9/11, including the towers looking like a big 11. But the point I'm making is Ground Zero, terminology from the Manhattan Project, the point above or below ground where nuclear or atomic bombs explode. The buildings were turned to dust and fell into their footprint. There's a lot of theories about why that is. Some people think a lot of the buildings were just empty the whole time and hollow floors, which is possible because only the Rockefellers wanted those buildings. No landlords did because there were so many vacancies in 68 when they started to put them up. The same year they made 911 the National Emergency Dialing Code. By the way, people need to look into 1968. It's the year the entire 911 plan went into motion. It's the year coronavirus was coined. It's the year fentanyl was approved by the FDA. On the 68th day of this year, the governor of Oregon overturned their legalization of fentanyl law after so many people died from it. 1968 is the year the book came out, The Population Bomb, about how we have to drastically do something to cut down the population. That book's 201 pages long. Anyway, I'm getting tangential again, but let me pass it back over.
All right, Jason, anything you can think of you want to get in? We're coming down to it.
Yeah, well, you briefly mentioned in, I think it was in hour one. Now, we've had 2 movies come out recently. One was the crappy one from the Obamas, Leave the World Behind, I think was the title, about things falling apart. And then we just had the recent one, Civil War, which I bothered to go see just to see if it was propaganda. And, well, you know how these things go. Do you have any thoughts on any of that stuff? Or what?
Yeah, Leave the World Behind, absolutely. So the title Leave the World Behind equates to 192. It released while that famous order at Yale, Skull and Bones, is 192 years old. And the funny thing about Leave the World Behind equaling 192 is at the end of the film, when the little girl finds the billionaire bunker and finally sees the Friends episode, up on the wall is the word Commodus. And Commodus is connected to the fall of Rome. And do you know what year he died in?
What?
192.
There's something I've got to throw in here. So in the movie Gladiator, they're representing a period of time which people like Fortune de Saint Germain will tell you was the best time to be a human being on this planet, which was the 4 or 5 emperors or whatever you want to call them, Caesars, before Commodus, just to make the point.
Yep, Commodus is the fall of Rome. That movie's about the fall of America. I could tell you a lot about what they encoded in that film. About the bridge collapse at 128. At exactly 128 minutes into that movie is when you see the New York City with nuclear clouds over it and the blowing bridge. And when that boat first lands on the shores in the beginning, there's 128 minutes left in the movie. The name of that boat is White Lion, which equates to 128. That's the name of the first slave ship in America, the White Lion. That's from August of 1619. In the Bible, you have the Acts 7:6 verse about 400 years of slavery. Acts is the 44th book of the Bible. Like Obama was number 44, elected 44 years after the Civil Rights Act. Again, it's 7:6, like the word slave equals 76, like Barack Obama equals 76, like Black History Month was recognized in 76. So that scene is paying tribute to that history. And again, it was August 2019 that 400 years of slavery in America passed. The next verse is Acts 7:7, which says that nation that had those 400 years of slavery will be punished. United States equals 77, like the nation's capital is on the 77th meridian. Donald Trump's 77 right now, almost 78. They're about to have the 77th Cannes Film Festival, which starts on Israel's birthday. And by the way, Judaism equals 77, like Zionist, like theater, and they're debuting the movie The Apprentice. There's a lot more to say about that. But it's all political theater, they're trying to remind you. But the 128, again, then it ties right into the bridge collapse in Baltimore, this predominantly black city. Oh, coming back to the 76 piece. The movie begins by looking at like a Philadelphia 76ers mug. Do you remember the day where they made a big deal in the morning that supposedly a bunch of cell phone outages happened, and then the news was paralleling it to the Obama movie?
Oh, big time, yeah.
So that was that. So Netflix debuted the movie on December 8th, 128. It was 76 days later that we had the cell phone thing where they were talking about that with the movie and the connection to Obama's film. So all of these things are unfolding ritual. And of course, that same World Economic Forum that simulated the pandemic, they've been doing the cyber polygons, simulating the grid coming down. If people are new to my work, you can read my very old blog post from 2013. The first thing I ever put out on the web when I first started, about how Janet Napolitano, when she stepped down from the Department of Homeland Security, she said the next 9/11 is not if, but when. And she said it'll be the national power grid going down and one form of terrorist attack, likely a cyber attack. Again, she has this connection to Arizona. And it's interesting because in recent years, in 2020, the hip hop group Public Enemy put out the album What You Gonna Do When the Grid Goes Down, and they chose to show Arizona on the cover of the album artwork. And we noticed that when that album came out, it was 142 days before Valentine's Day that year, 14/2. And there was a number of things I could say about Valentine's Day, but we said, watch out for some crazy weather in the world that could take down the grid. Because that album by Public Enemy also came out on the anniversary of JFK's weather control speech. For people who don't know this, look it up. September 25th, 1961, JFK talked about the future of weather control and how it was going to be a beautiful thing, how they could stop drought, all sorts of things. And again, this is the technology. It's a double-edged sword. You give a technology to control the weather to the right person, maybe it really actually could be a good thing. You give it to the wrong person, man, they can just tear down a section of neighborhood that they want to put some new condos in. And I think a lot of that is going on in the world to paint a picture. It's a whole nother topic, but crazy enough, the phrase weather control equates to 201, like the Jesuit order. The other year in Wyoming, when they said they had a once-in-a-thousand-year rain event that messed up Yellowstone, that was on the day leaving 201 days left in the year. And a lot of people, it's flying under the radar, but Bill Gates set up his new experimental nuclear reactor in Wyoming, where all the national parks are. I don't know if you guys know about that, but Bill Gates, they're working on this new nuclear reactor. I don't know if they've officially started the thing, but for people who haven't heard Bill Gates' 2010 TED Talk, you got to go back and listen. He laid it all out in 2010, the year. He said, he gave us 3 things in that video that all stood out. We got to reduce the Earth's population, and we can do it if we do a good job with VACCINES. He didn't make any mistake about his words. It came right out. And then he also talked about how gas should be $5 to $10 a gallon to decrease driving. And then at the end, he talks about how over in Russia and Ukraine, they got all these nuclear stockpiles. And, there's so much spent fuel there that can power the future. The idea is to take that spent nuclear fuel that they think there's historically no purpose for, to throw it in these underground cylinders and light it on fire and let it burn. According to Gates, these things could power cities like Los Angeles for 50 years with 0 emissions. So I know they're working on that in Wyoming. And that was in the news around the time they had that crazy weather in Wyoming that wiped out part of the park in the latest 201 ritual. The whole thing in Dubai was 201 days from the first act of admitted weather warfare. It just goes on and on and on. So I know you guys got to wrap this up, but we'll come back again and talk about things more. But for all the people who are not familiar with me, I just tried to spit out a little bit of everything to help you see how the scope of this work, if you will.
So we're going to have you back, Zach. Once you burn through King Kill, or whether you want to take a little time to digest it, it's 10, 15 pages printed.
I was actually wrong. It's 89. I just sent it to him.
Oh.
It's 89 pages?
Yeah.
I'll still read it. That's fine. That's my favorite number. We can talk about why another time.
Well, then that's a good omen. But I've got to make a point here. We will have Zach back on, but they were talking about the ridiculous Obama movie, which is a freaking insult for an ex-president
Right.
to put out such depressing, low-minded,
Right.
unconcerned tripe. That one thing alone should have triggered a blowback like the world has never seen. But this whole freaking thing is partly echoing around a little girl who just wants to see the final Friends. Check this out. Friends was the 4th most viewed finale in television history. They're claiming 52.5 million people. This idea began with a show called MASH. They're claiming back in the 80s, early 80s, that over 100 million people tuned in. That's why I'm making the parallel here. How many minds have been affected by this kind of bread and circus? I remember concisely the night of the Seinfeld finale. I was going out with some friends. I think it was a Thursday night. At least that's the way I remember it. I don't know if that's the correct day, but we're in San Diego. San Diego is a big, big city, and there was no one on the streets anywhere. And during the course of the night, I think we came to realize that it was the Seinfeld finale.
Indeed. By the way, Jerry Seinfeld equals 201. Recent season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Death of an actress, and she in an episode she'd held up her cell phone with 201 on it. These things aren't an accident. And again, Curb Your Enthusiasm now runs on HBO, home box office, which was founded by a Jesuit. Matthew Perry's recent death at age 54. Matthew Perry died exactly 126 weeks after the Friends special on HBO that closed out the show. Home box office, the big way is 126. Home box office, the small way is 54. That's just like John Carroll, 126, 154, who established Jesuit Georgetown. Kobe Bryant, dead on 126. His full name, Kobe Bean Bryant, 54. Kobe Bryant, 41, dead on the Pope's 41st day of his age while traveling from Catholic Mass. Patterns like this are through so many celebrity deaths. But Matthew Perry, the day he died, he also died on Julia Roberts' 56th birthday. Jesuit Orders 56, Society of Jesus is 56. Two names for the same order and two numbers that get used together in a lot of rituals are 54 and 56. It's another subject, but special hallmark numbers of this cabal. Again, Matthew Perry dies on Julia Roberts' birthday, and then she's the actress in this racially charged movie. Again, if for people who haven't seen the Obama movie, there's this racial friction while the grid's going down. Amazon did a similar movie when George Floyd broke out. It's called Lockdown 2025. The guy just wants to see his lottery numbers on the TV, and then his TV and his power gets shut off, but they told him to stay indoors. And the next thing, a race war is breaking out in LA. It's another crazy movie with numbers all over it. But yeah, predictive programming us. And what you just said so true, Crrow. It's exactly what I said. I said, come on, the former president's first movies, like about the end of America, like what is the symbolism of that? And again, he does come from the land of Lincoln. There's a rumor of civil wars breaking out in the movies. He's born in 1961, the 100th anniversary of the Civil War. You see why it's all coming to this moment now. It makes sense why he... we can go on and on. I know you got to wrap it up, Crrow.
They don't care anymore. As a matter of fact, that Friends thing, that Friends special, I think I didn't see it, so I'm kind of talking, secondhand here. But you know how the logo for Friends was the letter, and there was a different colored dot for each friend? Apparently, before Matthew Perry had died, they removed that dot from one of the airings. It's so blatant, and they're at a point where they think they can't be stopped. But I would urge people to remember one of the things Fortune said. We had a golden ticket when they told us to stay inside and breathe our own exhaust fumes and shut our businesses. Had we done the exact opposite, we'd be standing in a different world.
Exactly.
The effects of what the boat we missed there, or most of us missed there, that opportunity is in front of us every day. And for my part, what it comes down to is treating each other with respect. If I could snap my fingers and get 500 million people to treat each other and living things with respect, 50% of this cabal takeover would crumble in a day,
Mhm.
because it relies on misguided minds that have been so programmed, so queued up. And the thing that people forget is social engineering is statistical. And if I tell you that I statistically know something is 98% certain, what do you know about what you've just been told? That you should argue that it's not going to happen, or you should realize that there's a very good chance it will happen.
Exactly.
Social engineering is statistically proven. Jason, any last words?
Thanks for coming on with us, Zach. I'm very impressed, of course, with just how incredible you are with all this, and I'm glad you're going to be coming back with us, because I think having you on regularly to do current events, that's a brilliant thing to do.
If you guys felt like having me on once a month, if that's not too much, I mean, I can always do the monthly recap, because there's always at least one big story that the world should know about from the month. And the thing is, I never have any prepared notes. I just speak from the mind. And sometimes when I go back and watch my interviews, I realize like I forgot to tell crucial pieces of information, which will no doubt be true about this. But yeah, for anyone who's overwhelmed by all that I covered, go back and really listen to that 201 part and pay attention, because the number's huge and it's all throughout history. I don't even think I mentioned about how the CIA was established on the 201st day of the Pope's age, September 18th, 47, and how the words in their logo, Central Intelligence Agency, United States of America, equate to 201. Same as their motto, the work of a nation, the center of intelligence, 201. I know Crow loves to talk about the Tavistock Institute from 1947, the same year as the CIA, the same year Israel was drawn up. There's certain years in our history from 47 to 68 and others. We all know what happened in 2001 and 2020. There's reasons that years get chosen for bigger rituals than others. And that's something we can talk about in further streams. But again, for people who do not know a lot about the Jesuits, read about the Jesuits, the warnings from our ancestors about the Jesuits, why they had to be suppressed, what certain founders thought about the Jesuits, George Washington's National Archive letter about his concerns about the Illuminati infiltrating Freemasonry. We didn't even talk about Timothy McVeigh, Mr. 201, who blew up the Oklahoma City building, and how that also damaged the lodge behind the building, which then sold for $201,000. It just goes on and on and on. But you follow these certain trails, you'll see who's running this nation and how they got inauguration day to the 201st day of the nation's age on 20/1. And by the way, if you look up the official title of inauguration day, it's inauguration of the President of the United States. That's how it is on our government website, the .gov website, inauguration of the President of the United States. You guys want to guess what that equals?
201.
It sure does. So I'll leave it there.
I'm getting good at this.
You
I
are.
only have to
Ace
use
it.
one number.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, Zach, tell folks one more time where they can find you and your work, please.
Yeah, I have a website, GematriaEffect.News. A lot of stuff that I have is linked right from that website. I'm on Patreon. I'm on YouTube. I'm trying to get a podcast going. I have books on bookstores. Just search my name, Zachary K. Hubbard. You'll probably be sifting through lots of I have so many haters, you guys, if you don't know. Like I don't know if you guys know about the website. Oh God, what's the Wikipedia for conspiracy? I have a longer write up there on there than the Alex Joneses of the world. I have so many people trying to destroy my message, but I'm telling you guys, you listen to what I'm talking about, you pay attention, you'll see the world like you are Roddy Piper and they live. So thank you again, Crow. It was great to do the show with both of you, and I look forward to coming back.
All right. Well, everyone listening, we're going to start by, and I think it's interesting that the number of pages in the version of King Kill Zach just got sent is a number that has meaning to him. I think pairing Zach's mind with that bit of writing might be a very interesting thing. We'll find out. In terms of recurring guests, right now we're trying to get back on track where Jason and I are pulling one show or two shows a month where it's him and I. So we'll work out how the recurring thing will work. But with that, we're going to wrap it up here. That has been hour 2 of episode 578 with Jason Lindgren and Zach Hubbard. And I'd like to wish everybody everywhere in this world a happy, healthy, and higher-minded new era. There it is, man. Cheers.
Thank you.
All right. We are clear, guys.
Yeah. In the future, if I'm just talking too long, you guys can always interrupt me because I will go on and on and on.
Well, when we do this the next time around, we'll just have to plan to hand it back and forth because we'll get more bang for the buck if we hand it back and forth more. But kick through King Kill and then get in touch with us. I'd like to know your impressions, but we'll start there.
All right, I'll check out King Kill. I appreciate it.
The one I sent you from my Secrets of Saturn email is the one Rose sent you had some kind of messed up pages or something in it, so I found another one for you.
Okay, Secrets of Saturn email.
Yep, it's already there.
Perfect.
All right, guys, I got to run. It was great to catch up with you, Zach. See
All
you
right,
guys.
have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.